It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy.
Wake up!
Wake up, will you, pal?
They need a wake-up call.
Someday this country's gonna wake up.
Wake up and smell the coffee.
All righty, we got to Friday. Welcome in. It's the Wake Up Call, as always, broadcasting live from the DriveHubler.com studios. KB and Andy. He's Kevin Bowen. I'm Andy Sweeney. Mark Dykton producing today's effort on this Friday. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. You can always stream us, 107.5thefan.com. Check out the YouTube as well. You know, KB, first of all, good morning to you. You know, a couple days ago, we walked in here, was it Wednesday? And we said, boy, it's going to be an easy show. There's so much damn positivity, right? The Pacers had won, and Purdue had won, and, Indiana a couple games in a row. We thought, wow, a lot of positivity. We wake up today, we come in here on this rainy, stinky Friday, and it's going to rain a lot today, so be careful out there. And we have Indiana's five-star recruit saying, see you later, Mike Woodson. In just an unbelievable final couple minutes from Anthony Edwards as the Pacers. I know heartbreaker's been used, but boy, a game you really wish you could have won. They didn't win, and a rough game for the Pacers last night. Good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. Yeah, it is an ugly start to this Friday morning from a Mother Nature standpoint. Anthony Edwards is a bleeping freight train.
Isn't he?
He is... when you see the guys out west, you only see them twice a year,
Sure.
so you don't get them on obviously a routine basis or even as much as you see some of these Eastern Conference guys. Holy hell, you needed him to stay in the locker room after turning that ankle there on the first possession of the game, and I want to go there. I mean, for the umpteenth game in a row, there is Rick Carlisle taking the timeout of disgust.
It's every game.
It's every
single game.
I'm going to go another bleeping. It's every bleeping game. That the first timeout, each coach will take one of the coaches is going to take the early timeout. Like it happens in almost every NBA game of, okay, who's really pissed off here after the first couple of minutes? And seemingly every game, especially of late, it is Rick Carlisle. And sure enough, last night, with Edwards in the locker room.
4.5 minutes in.
You get down 10-2. I think it grew to 14-5 maybe is when the timeout officially came, and when you're just playing from uphill after that, I get an NBA game, teams come back and everything, but you're playing with fire, and you put pressure on the rest of the game, and when you're playing teams like that, with stars like that, and you get into game situations, more often than not, you get outstarred, and Tyrese Halliburton's a really good basketball player, and he played better last night, still not perfect, but better, but Anthony Edwards is on a different level. And that dude was just an absolute freight train in the final few minutes. So I'm not going, at least I'm going to try not to, go so anti-negative over the final few minutes.
Right.
Because a lot of me is just like, hey, man, that dude's just a flat-out stud.
He's in threes. It's step backs. It's the block at the end where he's hitting his head on the rim.
Literally hit his head on the rim.
What do you do? And it was, by the way, the last play, it was the right play. With 4 seconds to go by Halliburton, you push the ball. There's no timeout. You think you're going to get a layup, and on probably, 25, 26, 27 other teams, Aaron Nesmith glides in, he gets a layup, and we're going to overtime, but not against Anthony Edwards.
But I can be frustrated at the start when he's in the locker room, and I can be frustrated by the overall game 64 margin for error. I'm doing the thinning thing with my fingers right here. You just can't really sit here and be like, chalk that up to the star outstarred you in the fourth quarter and you'll get him next time. Well, unfortunately, next time's starting to shrink.
Right, you're running out of time.
And the standings are the standings right now, so... yes, bummer of a result last night, certainly inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse, at Orlando, at Oklahoma City coming up Sunday and Tuesday. Those will obviously be difficult matchups, and the Pacers continue, I would say, to be on the wrong side of the clunkiness. They've kind of been win here, loss here, win here, loss here. They now have lost 4 of 6.
Yeah, you know what I don't understand about their slow starts? And listen, and Carlisle knows this, and he's talked about it with us. He's talked about it in press conferences, KB. This is their sickness, is it not? This is their illness. This is probably for him one of the main things. And after the game, again, we'll play the sound as we go this morning on our checkdowns. But, every minute is valuable, even those first quarter minutes. And you're right, NBA teams a lot of times come back and you're down 17, you're down 15, you're down 10, and you come back. I understand that. But I guess here's what I don't understand, I should say, with all of this. Doesn't it feel like, and maybe I'm thinking too much college basketball, And boy, we'll get into some college basketball here in a second. But don't you feel like there's the hot start and then it trails off? Don't you feel like with teams that maybe aren't top elite teams, and that's the Pacers right now, don't you feel like there's a quick start and then you kind of trail off, you get the lead, and then you give up the lead? That is how I...
Yeah, I've got a buddy that waits till the double-digit lead happens and bets the other team.
And then bets, hey, listen,
every game, no matter who the opponent is.
That is a great thing to do. I'm sure Mark Dykton has done that. God knows I've done that. And... it just feels like they don't do. That's not what they do. They start out so poor, and you're right. 7:29 to go in the first quarter. Boom, there's your Carlisle timeout. You're down 14-5. You're down 28. You're down 10 at the end of the first quarter. And they know that this is their bugaboo. They know that this is something that we're talking about. They know this is their illness, and their head coach and their coaching staff is talking about it. And it still happens, and it happens in all these games, and it happens to good teams, and it happens against bad teams, and it just happens. And so it is, yes, Anthony Edwards is a freak, but there's just so many things that you didn't do. I would also say, I wanted your thoughts on this, and we got to get to in this first segment, IU losing their, Liam McNeeley. I mean, we'll get to that here in a second, but did you think, and help me here, and I know with the challenges, and there's 38 challenges during that game last night. I mean, it felt like they were going to the monitor, and that's a different discussion. We can do that another day. But Minnesota leads 105-104. And it's when Halliburton drives the lane and he goes for that, that right-hand layup kind of across the lane. Halliburton's getting into the lane, not settling for a three. And he gets hit in the head by Rudy Gobert. And, it takes 20, 30 seconds, whatever it is, and they show it on the big screen there in Gamebridge. And the fans are reacting, and Carlisle's reacting, and Halliburton's on the ground kind of, holding his face for a second there. I mean, to me, that was a clear flagrant foul. That's one of those where I'd love to know kind of what everyone was thinking after the game there, to not even, maybe I'm missing something, that they didn't even look at that. And then, of course, Halliburton goes to the line and misses the first free throw.
And I'll be honest, what you can and what you can't challenge, at times I do get confused by. And usually I think Chris Denari does a terrific job of explaining that to the viewer. And I forget if I thought he said that they were either out of challenges.
They were.
Okay.
They were, because again, there were 38 challenges in the game last night.
Again, in the college game, we go to the monitor
everything
to decide which song's going to be played at the next media timeout. So the college game, we would have been at the monitor 37 times.
And that was with 1:28 to go in the game.
In the final 2 minutes there. I didn't think the Pacers got a great whistle last night. Again, I think our listeners know I'm not one that, whines and cries too much over officiating and all, but no, I didn't think they got a great whistle. But holy hell, again, Edwards he's just an absolute freight train. Shout out to Aaron. Aaron tweeted what level of smothered chicken that would be the block for Anthony. I mean, he literally hit his head on the rim, Andy.
I know.
You see his comment after the game? It's the highest he's ever jumped?
Yeah, he says, the highest I've ever jumped. He's like, yeah, it kind of hurts right now, hitting my head on the rim. Well, good for you.
Must be nice, right?
Good for you.
And, to be that athletic and then to be as good of a shot maker. I mean, it is damn impressive, his ability to shoot the basketball. And I know he obviously shot it a ton last night, but still, I mean, he had some tough shots. So, yes, disappointing result. Again, the lone home game for the Pacers in a 2-week stretch. They lose last night to the T-Wolves. Bloomington.
I was wondering, you were. I could tell in your mind, you're like, how am I going to transition to the wreck that's happening right now in Bloomington?
I said to you yesterday, and in reality, I was talking to the IU fan base that does want Mike Woodson back for a year 4. And I said to them, indirectly to you, I guess, show me the optimism. Where is the optimism that I'm supposed to grab onto here? Because, again, this is not Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, the first-time head coach. You're going to have the early growing pains. You're looking at this as a long-term investment, et cetera, et cetera. This is a very short-term-ish type of quick fix here. Where is it? And I don't know if Liam McNeeley purposely did this on the day after Mike Woodson gets the public backing from the university like he did. But, oh my gosh, the amount of disrespect. I cannot imagine many times you've seen a university say, coach is coming back, and the lone 5-star recruit, who's been in this class for several months now.
Since November. Yep.
Says, see ya.
Maybe earlier.
24 hours later. Like that, usually it's the reverse. It's the school, hey, we're moving on, and boom, the recruit says, all right, see you later, I'm opening up the recruitment. When the school says we're backing our coach, and the recruitment says, damn, so much for that then, it's one of the more indirectly or directly. Again, I don't know if Liam McNeely's been planning this for several weeks and several months, and it just happened that whatever, March 7th is the date that he decided to circle on the calendar. But that is one of the more disrespectful
it really is.
Recruiting moments in a world where there's a lot of moments.
Well, all it is disrespected line. Yeah,
and
that's the whole backbone of it.
I mean, this is a guy that, again, it's a 5-star recruit. Was the program going to be saved? No, but let's not act like for 1 second that, this school, Montverde Academy, has been pretty good to Indiana from Jalen Hood-Schifino. I think Malik Renew's been a nice player. Skill set wise, by all accounts, Liam McNeely fills an area that you've seriously lacked in shooting the basketball. And now you have absolutely swung for the fences in the portal last year.
Yep.
And whiffed every single time.
Yep.
You swung for the fences in the 2024 recruiting class.
Yep.
And whiffed every single time. And as Jeff Rabjohn says to us yesterday, this is the team in the Big Ten Conference with the #1 NIL budget.
It is. You mentioned the disrespect. When I saw, okay, so you guys aren't going to believe me. I don't expect. I see Mark Dykton smirking. I do not expect you to believe me. But we're sitting here the last several days. Woodson's been stinking it up in Indiana, but they won 3 in a row. And you asked the question the last couple days, what is it that we're holding on to? And obviously, McNeely is a name. And in the back of my mind, I'm sitting here, okay? And I didn't say it on air. Okay, so I don't expect anyone to believe me, but I'm sitting here, KB, and I'm saying, why is McNeely still committed to Indiana? Like, that's what I'm thinking in my mind. You know that everybody wants him. He's the 11th player in the class, and he's a 5-star, and if you go look at everyone else who was trying to chase him down in his recruitment, I'm sitting here saying, why is McNeely up for this? Especially,
he must have had a hell of a visit.
Especially, KB, when Mike Woodson's like, oh, it's about the post play for me. I don't really want to play 4 out, 1 in. I'm like, wait a minute, this is a forward who's going to stretch the floor and shoot threes, and he's watching this archaic offense, and he's listening and viewing the words of Mike Woodson. And I'm seriously saying, God bless this kid, man. He must love Indiana, and I can understand it. The NIL deal must be popping off. There's 2 things on this. Number 1, Bill Self's taking your players. So you've had John Calipari take Boogie Fland. You've had Bill Self come in, even though his kid has signed the national letter of intent. Boom, Bill Self in Kansas going to take him. And then Derek Queen, he goes to Kevin Willard and Maryland. So those are the 3 coaches that have walked in and taken your guy. And Bill Self, vicious what he did here. And I tweeted out last night that I wondered, and now we know the answer. But then I did not know the answer right when this happened. I tweeted out, hey, is this, when they said, hey, Mike Woodson's coming back, Peegs yesterday, Rabjohn's told us, Rabjohn's told us yesterday, they did this for portal reasons, right? The portal's opening in a week and a half, and
the announcement that Woodson's coming back.
The announcement that Woody's coming back. And so I was like, well, was it for that, and was it for McNeely, right? Was it for McNeely to show him, hey, your guy is going to be there? But it's actually the opposite of that he leaves after the announcement. And then, so I wondered about timing. That's the other thing. I wondered about timing, and apparently, the timing was he just told the staff. This wasn't something that Indiana could see coming. They were promoting him on Wednesday to be on all these watch lists
March
and everything
6th,
else.
12:06 p.m., the Indiana basketball Twitter account tweets, All-American, 3rd team, Liam McNeely. 28 hours later, the lone recruit in the 2024 recruiting class for Mike Woodson has decommitted.
Yeah,
is asking out from his letter of intent.
They didn't know. And by the way, why is he signing that? That's an entirely different thing. But they didn't know, and I think you mentioned the potential, disrespect or a surprise. Indiana didn't know this was coming.
No tourney team only shops in the portal. No tourney team only lives in the portal.
No.
I mean, if you look at these top 5, top 10 teams, or even want to go deeper, you just don't find the one-year quick fixes exclusively in the portal. Sure, you could kind of sprinkle something on top of the dish, but the dish is largely made from the homegrown talent, from the guys that have been in your program for several years, and you don't have that. I mean, again, when we're asking Jeff Rabjohns yesterday, and it's not a slam dunk that Trey Galloway, Mackenzie Mbako, Malik Renew, that they're all coming back. And where is the in-house development? The guy, I mean, where's like the 4-star recruit that you have on the Caleb Banks of the world, the CJ Guns of the world, the guys that there should be internal roster development with? If you look at that UConn team, it's not a bunch of 5-star studs that Danny Hurley has gone out there and gotten. It's guys that have grown within their program, and several guys that have been there for a couple of years and have gotten used to what college basketball is all about, and player development has been there. Certainly Purdue would be the easy answer, but I know it's very low-hanging fruit, and that just adds a disrespect for Indiana's program right now of where they're at when you bring Purdue up. But just the lack of insurance policies in Mike Woodson's roster building is kind of wild. And that statement goes back to last year.
Sure does.
When you swung and missed quite often in the portal, and you went into a season banking on the health of Xavier Johnson and the volatility of him not to be there, which is always there. Hell, we've seen it since his return again. And then you're banking on this ascension from Trey Galloway to handle a lot more on his plate with, again, no guard insurance at all. They have an open scholarship for this season, and they just elected not to use it. And they're pretty much having a medical red shirt with Ja'Kai Newton, their other freshman, with Gabe Cupps in the backcourt. So, again, where is the optimism?
Yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess.
Where do you point to it? And the negative recruiting, it's obviously real, and it's going to continue to be there. It's going to be there, certainly from a high school standpoint, a lot. I think you're seeing it here with Liam McNeely's situation, but I think you'll even see it a little bit portal-wise. I know the portal guys can be a little bit more of a one-and-done feel to it, so maybe you won't see it as much there. But in terms of establishing some bones for your program and recruiting to that, I'm not going to pretend to be locked into the 2025 recruiting class for Indiana, but I don't think there's major inroads with that group either. And the positive developments that might be there cannot be growing at any sort of rate like you would hope to see. So this is just a welcome to the reality of where you're at. And I think the worrisome you also have, Andy, is that any signs of struggle next season, any signs of adversity next season,
it's going to be toxic.
It's going to be loud.
Yeah.
It's going to be ugly.
No doubt.
And it's not going to be at all what you want from a culture, fan, atmosphere standpoint. And part of me just says, you made your bed, have fun laying in it. Like, I mean, you could do something about it. But that would involve telling one of your own goodbye. It would involve a financial, certainly, burden as well. And are you willing to do that? Obviously, publicly, they came out and said that they are not.
Yeah, the answer is no. I think of Arkansas. We got to take a break here, but I think of Arkansas of a team that tried to just get a bunch of kind of mercenaries in the portal. Maybe St. John's, but I know Patino was in year number 1. Quickly, coming up in about 20 minutes, Mark Jaynes is going to join us. Cannot wait for that conversation. Greg Rakestraw at 8 o'clock, and Joel A. Erickson. Listen to he and A. Atkins' podcast this morning. Joel will join us coming up at 9 o'clock.
Rain, go away. That is what you're going to encounter on this Friday morning. Thank you for closing out the week with us. Kevin Bowen, Andy Sweeney, Mark Dykton here on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
93.5 and Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, March 11th and 12th.
All right, so let's get to your morning check down. Pacers losers last night, a heartbreaker. We've been talking about it. 113-111, your final last night in Cambridge. Anthony Edwards, 44 points. He was unbelievable last night. He missed, 10, he missed 5-10 minutes of the game with that turned ankle early on in the first couple minutes. Here's Rick Carlisle postgame on defending Anthony Edwards.
Edwards is a physical player, and you got to play physical players physically. The whistles weren't going our direction tonight, so so we needed to do something to dictate what was going on. Second half we did, first half we didn't, and so again, it's just a tough learning thing.
Another ugly start. That's been way too much commonplace for the Pacers here as of late, and adding insult to another loss. Benedict Mathurin going to be reevaluated in a week, so he's going to miss. Last night was game one of a 4-game stretch, at least, with a shoulder injury. We hope it's not serious, was the pregame comment from Rick Carlisle on that. So not good news for certainly a guy that has been a consistent scorer for you since the All-Star break off the bench. Sunday in Orlando, next up for the Pacers. All right, the march, I guess, to trying to win Arch Madness begins today for Indiana State. It's a 1 o'clock tip. They will take on Missouri State again this afternoon. That is on ESPN+. Not to get too deep in the weeds with what the tournament looks like for them, but Andy, if you look at their bracket right now, today would be a quad 3 game. Tomorrow, no matter who they play, Belmont or Northern Iowa, that's also a quad 3 game. Sunday, if it's Drake, that's a quad 1 game.
That's going to be a 1, right?
So I know it probably is obvious, but if you're going to lose one, you don't want to lose the quad 3 game. You want to lose the quad 1 game if you're trying to map out what a resume could look like. I did see this note floated around earlier in the week. Right now, Indiana State is 29 in the net. In the net era, every single team that has been top 31 of the net.
Oh, don't do this.
has made the NCAA tournament.
Oh, no, don't do this.
On March 5th.
Yeah, but see, they're the outlier because they're the mid-major that is kind of trumping everything. It's why we've looked at each other saying, wait, are they not going to make it and be in the top, like you mentioned, 31? By the way, Missouri State today, they beat Missouri State by 22 and by just 2 earlier this
Missouri
season.
State had a halftime lead over Indiana State in their last matchup, but yes, Indiana State did win that by 2. Again, how do they handle 3 games in 3 days? A team that doesn't play a lot of guys, Josh Schertz's bunch, that'll be something to keep an eye on. And Sunday, that is the big day here to close out the Big Ten. I cannot wait for the scene inside of Mackey Arena. Again, Andy, celebrated on Senior Day as one of the greatest players that program, arguably the greatest player that program has ever seen.
No doubt about it.
One of the greatest this state has ever seen, the Big Ten has ever seen.
Yep.
And frankly, one of the greatest players college basketball has seen in a long, long time. That is the career of Zach Edey coming to an end from a home game standpoint inside of Mackey. Going to be quite the scene. 12:30 Fox against Wisconsin. Indiana will have their Senior Day against Michigan State, 4:30 on CBS, and then they'll ask any students if they want to play on the team next year. I think that's how it works.
You know when a football team has like a tryout for like a kicker or something like that?
Tom Crean had baseball players play on his first team. That might be the route for Mike Woodson.
When they shoot the T-shirt cannon, it'll be like, you're on the team. It'll be actually an IU jersey.
It's one of those Willy Wonka golden tickets. Come to walk-on tryouts. Actually, come to scholarship tryouts.
You're our 4. Get out here.
For next year. IndyCar season opener is Sunday. The voice of the 500, the voice of IndyCar, Mark Jaynes, next.
The Pacers head
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Now we're in our bunker here, but all the radar looks like it's raining. It's just raining, so be careful out there on your morning commute. Appreciate you hanging out with us.
Good time to go to Florida, right?
Boy, you ain't kidding. St. Petersburg this weekend. That's the beginning of the IndyCar series. And to talk about that, let's go out to the Payless Liquors hotline. Mark Jaynes joins us, voice of IndyCar Radio Network and, of course, the 500. Mark, it's good to meet you over the phone. A very good morning to you. I guess let's start here. You know, so much prep goes into these weekends in these races. New season starting as well. What are one or two items you guys are that you found interesting and you'll be talking about on the broadcast on Sunday?
Well, I think for sure it's going to be good for program sales because I think Team Penske is the only team that is intact as it was at the close of last season. So, you know, a lot of familiar drivers, but in unfamiliar fire suits and some drivers in different locations. And so certainly, as you guys know, covering team sports as you do, chemistry is a huge part of success when it comes to any form of sport. And you'd like to think in the interview process and making the arrangements and putting your team together that, you know, you've got all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, but sometimes it boils down to chemistry. It works well. Sometimes it doesn't. So I think that's one of the most interesting storylines to me is how all of these new drivers and these new homes and these expanded race teams are going to fare throughout the course of a season that's a challenging season and a bit of a grind at times.
Well, speaking of chemistry, you got all the stooges back around you here coming up on Sunday in the booth?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll be joined by our driver analyst, Davey Hamilton. I think he's absolutely one of the best, especially at race strategy. I mean, he can figure it out like no one else. And then, of course, Jay Query, Michael Young, and Nick Yeoman and Ryan Marine. We'll have Alex Wolf and Joel Sebastianelli and others throughout the course of the season. And then, of course, we expand things when we get to the month of May. And I guess we'll break the news to you guys. We're happy to join this year. He'll be joining us as a pit reporter. He probably should have joined us long ago. It started as a conversation during the IHSAA football state finals, but we'll be adding a longtime Indianapolis media veteran, Rich Nye, to the stable for the 500 and also the Grand Prix and the Brickyard weekend. So we certainly welcome Rich to the broadcast team.
No one defines pro more than Rich Nye. I love hearing that
great
news from Mark Jaynes, the voice, of course, of the 500 and IndyCar. He's with us here. St. Pete coming up Sunday afternoon, 12:30 green flag from down there. Rookie class, Mark. Name, storylines there. Certainly for the 500, obviously Kyle Larson's name speaks for itself. But when you go through the lineup here coming up on Sunday, any rookie storylines you're keeping an eye on?
Well, I know he's been with the series before, but I'm anxious to see how Pietro Fittipaldi fares with Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan Racing. I mean, that's obviously a famous name in the annals and the history of motorsports. But you know, each and every year we get an outstanding crop of rookies from the Indy Next Series, and certainly this year is no exception. And that Indy Next Series, by the way, is going to be a championship to watch as well. That grid's expanded to 22 cars, but you know, you go to Kiffin Simpson, I think a lot of interest on him with Ganassi Racing. Linus Lundqvist is still considered a rookie, and he was one of the best to ever do it in the Indy Next Series. Interesting to see what a guy like Marcus Armstrong, who's not a rookie, but what he'll do with a full season. And, of course, Christian Rasmussen is going to be in for Ed Carpenter Racing on the ovals. And Colin Braun gets a shot. Tom Blomqvist still considered a rookie. And although those guys have a lot of experience in various forms of racing, be interesting to see how all that experience transfers over to the NTT IndyCar Series. But as is always the case, a talented crop of rookies, and that battle for that Rookie of the Year award should be a good one.
The great Mark Jaynes with us here on the Wake Up Call on the Payless Liquors hotline on this Friday. Mark, rule changes. Any changes overall that you'll be watching closely coming up on Sunday?
Well, not necessarily a rule change, but I think an adjustment to the practice schedule, which I think is, going to be better for the fans that are listening and watching, and certainly those in the stands. You know, we had practice sessions in the past, and because of tire management issues, teams had a tendency to take a wait-and-see approach for the first 30 minutes or so. Now, you know, the rookies had an opportunity to go out because they got an extra set of tires for the weekend at every racetrack. And so, you know, unfortunately, there were times when there were only 2, maybe 3 cars. But now at St. Petersburg, there will be a 20-minute all skate. That's all cars for 20 minutes. And then the field will be split into two groups following that 20-minute all skate to begin practice one. And they'll be split by odd and even numbered pit boxes, and they'll get 2 10-minute segments on an alternating basis. And so the clock in segments 1 and 2 will stop for red flags so they get the full complement of minutes. But I think what that's going to do, and the teams and the drivers approached the series about this, and the series listened to it. It is on a trial basis only, but it certainly is going to increase the track activity and keep cars on the track, which is what people want to see.
Again, you know that voice. It is the one and only Mark Jaynes. He's with us here, the voice of the 500 and IndyCar on the Payless Liquors hotline. Mark, schedule-wise early in the year, it's always, okay, is St. Pete going to fall into February? Is it into March? How big of a gap is it after St. Pete? The only, or I don't think we get any ovals until the 500 coming up, obviously in late May. Walk us through the event coming up a little bit later this month. Here, I guess, second on the IndyCar schedule, because I think for a lot of our listening audience, they're not used to this being on the schedule.
Yeah, you're talking about Thermal Club. Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of an all-star event, and a lot of money up for grabs for these teams. It's actually tied in with the test session as well throughout the course of the weekend at that fabulous facility in California. And there will be a full day of testing for these teams, and then they'll go. They'll have a practice session, and then they'll get ready to qualify, and they'll qualify in a couple of different groups, and the top 6 from each group go into a round of 12, and those 12 will shoot it out for some cash, which teams can always use. It's the first time they're trying a format like this. It's a great add to the schedule, I think, and a great facility, and we're interested to see how it all shakes out, just like you are.
The defending champ for Sunday is Marcus Erickson. You go back, Scott McLaughlin was terrific, not only last year, but certainly in winning in 2022. Colton Herta, Joseph Newgarden, and Will Power among some of the defending champs at St. Pete. Mark, always great to hear your voice. Safe travels down there to Florida, and looking forward to the call coming up on Sunday.
Well, we're happy you guys are the mothership as always, for sure. We have a long and storied history together, and hopefully when May rolls around, you guys feel free to stop by the booth and join us anytime.
Cannot wait. That is the great Mark Jaynes right there, the voice of the 500 and IndyCar. So, again, their schedule, I'm going to ramp up a little bit here. You'll get 2 items in the month of March. He just laid out what that thermal challenge is like coming up in a few weeks, but no oval races before the 500. Usually Texas has fallen on the schedule. That will not be there here leading to the 500. There are a good amount of ovals actually a little bit later in the year, which is a change of the norm there. But coming up, green flag, 12:30 on Sunday, the streets of St. Pete.
2 things. I know he's being nice there, but the last person Mark wants in the booth around his broadcast would be me, okay? So that would be number 1.
Well, he usually has Jake Query with him, so well, I don't know if you are totally accurate with that statement.
It's a quick-moving broadcast. Is that something you think you could do? That's a fast broadcast, man.
It's art, really, is their execution on it.
It's the opposite of what we do, complaining about IU basketball for 9 minutes at a time.
I've been fortunate for a practice, because the practices are very long in the month of May. I've sat with Mark Jaynes and Nick Yeoman, I think was the other one I sat in on a couple of years ago. It was a treat to be up there.
I would imagine so.
In that booth. But it is also, honestly, it's kind of a tradition for me when I get to the spring and summer. I try to plan the outdoor yard activities around these races.
That's a good idea.
And tune them in, and then, okay, time for me to head outside and
you're mowing the lawn and
do some lawn duty here.
Laying some mulch down this Sunday afternoon.
Try to plan that around the IndyCar races. So, again, we'll get started coming up here Sunday in St. Pete. Greg Rakestraw, speaking of people that certainly you hear around the 500, he's going to join us coming up in about 15 regionals for the boys coming up. Boy, it was a great sectional weekend. Regional time here for the boys in a few, and then Joel A. Erickson talk a little Colts at 9 o'clock. Their version of March Madness beginning on Monday. The NFL's version of it going to ramp up here with free agency. Legal tampering starting on Monday, and the official new league year on Wednesday.
I love the phrase legal tampering. It's one of my favorite phrases in all of sports.
You can't not say it without going legal tampering, and I'm making the quote sign here. We probably should mention the Jaylon Johnson news, Bears cornerback, 4-year deal at $76 million. He was a franchise tag of the Bears, and they've already got the long-term deal figured out. Again, I'm not holding my breath that the Michael Pittman Jr. situation will get cleared up, cleaned up as quickly as that did. I do think something to note on that, though, it's the first big cornerback contract here of the offseason.
He got paid. He got $54 million guaranteed, KB. He got paid.
And I think you bring that up for two reasons. One, is that setting the market for the L'Jarius Sneed Kansas City cornerback situation, who has been tagged, by all accounts, is seeking out a trade or has permission, I should say, to seek that out. A long-term deal, of course, is what he is wanting. So does that set a little bit of price range for that? Does that tell the rest of the league, hey, you want Sneed? It's got to be at least $19 million. I think people would view Sneed maybe a little higher than Jaylon Johnson if you want to evaluate those players. And Kenny Moore is more of a slot guy, but does that help set the cornerback market? I think a lot of times you're waiting for the first big domino at a position, and then everybody else at that position can kind of fall in line of, okay, that player's better, that player's worse, here's the market value here. Again, Kenny's more of a slot guy, and he's a little older, so I don't know if that is exactly the case. But I think when you get to the start of next week, Andy, if you're ranking Kenny Moore, Grover Stewart, Julian Blackmon, we know Michael Pittman Jr., you're ranking those next three on the list. I think Kenny tops that three-man trio. I think you could debate it. Some might say Grover Stewart.
I would debate with Grover. Yeah, I think that would be the conversation.
But again, where is your veteran presence in the secondary if you're letting Kenny Moore walk?
I was listening. We'll have Joel A. Erickson coming up at 9. He and Nate Atkins, they're back and forth on their podcast on the IndyStar. I think Joel, and I'll ask him coming up at 9 o'clock. I think Joel has convinced himself that the Colts need to go get L'Jarius Sneed. I think he might be there. And one of his reasons.
Did he give parameters on the draft pick to give up?
Well, I mean, they talked about, hey, would you give up number 15 overall? Would you give up your first rounder? And I think me and you both would say no to that, right? To me, I could start at a second rounder and then, you throw in something else. And I say that's something else. Chris Ballard would say, well, if I throw in a second and a fifth, hey, that fifth rounder, I've hit on some of these picks. Some of these late round guys you're not paying very much money to. Their reasoning was, besides maybe a Kendall Fuller and you see Johnson get re-up there in Chicago, there just aren't a lot of quality corners, and it feels like the corners that are out there are available. And Kenny Moore probably doesn't fit this mold, but the corners that are out there are available because maybe they're a little bit past their prime, right? You're going to pay someone a 4-year deal where they're going to be 32, 33 years old at the end of the deal. Being a cornerback in the NFL, the answer would be, well, maybe you probably don't want to do that.
I was in awe last night watching that Pacers game in two different ways, Andy. I was in awe of watching the freight train that is Anthony Edwards close out that game. It was really one of the more star-studded performances you're ever going to see, or at least you've seen this season. I mean, 44 ties the season high. He literally hit his rim, or he hit the rim, I should say, on the final block attempt of the game to seal that. And this is a guy that went to the locker room, I believe, on 2 separate occasions last night of the first quarter as well. So, again, in awe, jaw-dropping watching Anthony Edwards play. And I also was in awe of watching another pathetic start by the Pacers. And that, to me, is probably where my worry level goes more. This league is obviously has tons and tons of star-studded talent. And you see them close out games and make the plays down the stretch a whole lot. But for this team, Andy, to have gone through the bumpy road here as of late, and you would think that would create a high amount of early game urgency. Like you would think out of the gate, you'd see a jolt of energy, and then all of a sudden maybe that tapers off over the course of 48 minutes. But we haven't even seen that. It's a team that's having to climb up the steep mountain much, much more earlier in games on a consistent basis. And last night, for the umpteenth game in a row, it felt like there's Rick Carlisle taking the timeout of disgust. He takes the first one of the game. 14-5 was the score last night. Get Edwards, for those that missed it, he turns his ankle 5 seconds into the game.
It looked kind of nasty, too.
He goes to the locker room. He goes straight to the locker room. Doesn't even go to the bench.
He runs right to the locker room.
He hobbles right to that visiting locker room, and you get down 10-2. With him and Karl Anthony Towns not on the floor, now you're down 10-2. Your first home game in a 2-week stretch, and that's how you react to the start. You get down 14-5. Carlisle takes a timeout. Yes, you came back in the game, but you've just put so much pressure on you the rest of the way. And then when you get into the game situation late, their star, just dominates the closing minutes. You just can't play with that fire. And that's the thing that probably frustrates me the most about the Pacers right now. A team that should have this out-of-the-gate urgency and pissed-off attitude, I don't see it whatsoever. And you can go back to the last 5, 6, probably even more games that they haven't had that.
Here's Rick Carlisle postgame. He was asked about it. Hey, the first quarter, is that when you lost the game? Here's what he had to say.
The first quarter was a dud. We didn't come out with attitude or presence, dug a big hole. We were poor defensively. And from there, it was an uphill climb.
Yeah, he called it a dud. It was grim there for a little bit. They got it within 10. And, for me...
They looked like bunk in the first quarter, to steal your word.
Dude, here's what I don't understand. You mentioned the urgency. This is the main storyline with the Pacers besides some of the Tyrese Halliburton stuff that we've been talking about. How teams are guarding him, his shot selection, his body language, his mini slump. Like, that is one of the other thing besides the Halliburton stuff has been, Carlisle, that's all he's talked about. How many it felt like on Tuesday when we had Rick on that he went back to starts of games and every minute counting 5 times. Like, he'd answer a question, but he'd go back to kind of, and you could tell, hey, this is the singular point that it seems like the Pacers are stressing. And here's the thing. I don't know if anybody knows why this is the case. I don't know if Rick Carlisle doesn't know why they come out like this. I'm sure they've changed practice. He's telling them they understand getting down 14-5, 10-2. That's not the right thing to do. I'm not sure anybody knows why they're bad at this particular thing.
I have such higher expectations for the Pacers handling the grind of an 82-game season. I feel like a lot of Pacers, led by their star, they strike me as dudes that individually are very self-motivated. They love the game of basketball. They don't have to get up for these random games on a Tuesday, Wednesday night.
They play. You feel like they play hard,
yeah,
right?
And just
like a lot of their players.
And for lack of a better phrase, they want to be out there. And there's some nights I watch some guys around the league, and I'm like, yeah, that dude might have been, out a little bit late last night, or he is totally checked out. And right now, especially without Benedict Mathurin for the next week, which for those that missed it, he's going to miss 4 games. Last night was game 1. Shoulder injury will be reevaluated in a week.
That scares you, doesn't it? He'll be reevaluated.
Right.
That means he's not back in 4 games.
The Carlisle quotes were, we hope it's not serious. Yeah. So they're still kind of in the evaluation period with that. You can't have Aaron Nesmith going goose egg for an entire half. And that's what he did in the first half last night. And if teams are going to be this cognizant of trying to take away Tyrese Halliburton, you've got to make sure that your others help out. And Nembhard and Nesmith are largely out there for their defense, but again, you've got to get some offensive punch from them.
Yeah, Nesmith was 2 of 10 last night. It's just not going to cut it. It's just not.
No, not at all.
Yeah, he can't score single figures.
I'm not asking for 20 from him night in, night out, but he's got to be a double-figure guy for you, and he's got the talent. That's why I also bring him up, because I think expectation should be there. That should be a dozen-point guy every night. And honestly, that might be a little bit of a low bar for him. And for him to go goose egg in the first half, now you've put the pressure on the third quarter. And it was a great start to that third quarter. It was a great, really, quarter in general. And at times, it looked like the Pacers might be in control going into the fourth quarter. But again, Andy, you're putting so much pressure on the third quarter of the game. Whereas if you alleviated that early on, then all of a sudden, it doesn't get into these definite game situations late where Anthony Edwards, frankly, he looked like a top 3 or 4 player in the NBA last night.
We don't have time here, but, I know ESPN Radio, when I was driving in, they were talking, would you rather have Tatum? Would you rather have Edwards? I think Tatum was, 26 years old-ish. Anthony Edwards is 22. So if you were to, start a team in the NBA, Anthony Edwards would be in your top 3. Would he not? Again, this is for a different time.
The
but
speed,
he'd
the
be in your top 3 or 4
physicality,
guys.
the ability to chump.
We can play defense, too.
Even the shot making. Yeah, he's a stud, and Pacers fans certainly saw that last night. Speaking of studs, Greg Rakestraw. He joins us next.
Next It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, happy Friday to everybody. Broadcasting live from the DriveHubler.com studios. KB and Andy, a couple more hours to go. Reminder, coming up at 9 o'clock, Joel A. Erickson will join us from the Star. We'll talk some Colts football, free agency, Michael Pittman Jr. and everything else. We'll do that with him. But you know, it's a Friday at 8 o'clock. You know what that means. Greg Rakestraw joins us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Greg, a very good morning to you. I guess let's start here, if you don't mind. We're seeing the changing of guard there at IUPUI basketball. Matt Crenshaw a couple days ago relieved of his duties. What do you make of the job as now they got to figure out who's going to be the next leader of their men's basketball program?
Well, you know, again, as much as I love Matt, and my first year doing the radio 23 years ago was Matt's freshman season. So I have known him for nearly a quarter of a century. It simply wasn't working. 14 wins in 3 years was not going to get it done, especially with the new and dynamic AD and Luke Basso. And again, I just think kind of things behind the scenes have not been in place like this for IUPUI in some time. I think this is a program as a whole that is going to take off. So there has been a tremendous amount of interest in that job. And while and the other thing I would say is that it is so much easier to flip a program now than it was, even just a couple of years ago. The example I would give you in our league is Green Bay. Green Bay won 5 games in 21-22. They won 3 games last year. They're one of the top 4 teams in the Horizon League this year. So because of the portal, it can be done quickly, which is, again, part of the reason why IUPUI felt they had to make a move.
Rake, you and I on the drive up to South Bend a few months ago, we nerded out over an IUPUI combo for quite some time. I'm bullish on the ability to do something with that program. And I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but you know this better than anybody. Their best teams have been led by an all-city kid right here in Indianapolis, whether that be George Hill or Alex Young, and then great supporting cast, largely from local talent as well. And then I think you throw in the portal element of, hey, I want to get back to Indy that some kids could have here in today's day and age of college basketball. I just think there is a chance there. I think it helps they're in the Horizon League and not the Summit League anymore when they've had to make some other hires. Walk me through where they are at arena-wise, and could you explain maybe a little bit more on you feel like financially they could be in a better state than maybe they've been in?
Financially, frankly, they're getting far more support from Bloomington than they ever have. Bloomington, frankly, has been a hindrance to athletics in Indianapolis in the past. I don't think that is the case anymore. In terms of an arena, there potentially could be some news in terms of something on campus, I think, popping in the very near future. But frankly, it's, playing at the Coliseum, the arena is not the problem, or hasn't been, because they've been doing that for the last 10 years. But to your point, let's simply revisit the starting 5 when IUPUI had their best season, 2007-2008, went 26-7. That starting 5 was led by George Hill, who is obviously one of one in terms of being a 15-year NBA player, but, IPS kid, Broderville High School. Starters around him, Bishop Knoll, transfer from Butler, Perry Meridian, transfer from Bowling Green. Starting center was a former walk-on from Taylor High School, and then the power forward that went with him was from Marion High School. So it kind of tells you what you need to know. In the past, needs have been filled and great players have been brought in from other states. The sixth man of that group that I just mentioned was John Avery, who is from Mansfield, Ohio, lives here in the area these days. Was a phenomenal player at IUPUI. Right after that, and a part of that team as a freshman, was Leroy Nobles from Louisville. Pascal Siakam's older brother, Christian Siakam, was on that team as a redshirt. And obviously, he's originally from Cameroon, but he played his prep basketball in Cincinnati. So, again, it doesn't have to be all Indianapolis or all Indiana guys, but you have to have a base here. And I think back to the documentary, they would draw a line across I-4 in Florida and say everything south, that's the state of Miami. Well, we've kind of said that too. Draw a highlighter around 465, You got about 50 high schools you can pull from when you do that usually produce Division I level talent. Think locally or think globally, act locally if you're IUPUI. Get your kids to stay here or come back here, and you can be successful immediately.
And again, I think the Alex Young team would back that up as well, whether it was John Ashworth or Robert Glenn or Stephen Thomas. I mean, certainly that followed a very similar script as well.
Well, listen, if you're going to rattle off all those names, mention your buddy Esposito. Don't leave him out of the conversation, okay?
We don't need to feed that ego too much here, Sean Esposito. One of the greatest shooters in IUPUI history, though. Thank you for that, Ray.
And one of the worst defenders, so I'll bring him back down to earth for you. You're welcome.
Boy, I hope he's listening here on this Friday morning. The one and only Greg Rakestraw again, this Friday segment presented by CarX. He's with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. I know you and JMV out in Terre Haute over the weekend. Wine and dining there, well-deserved for you two. With a 6-7 man rotation, 3 wins in 3 days. Is that what they need?
Again,
or is that what they have to have is the better way to ask it.
Right. I think getting to Sunday gives them a chance in an at-large berth, but you don't want to sweat that out for a week. And you don't want to, cap off what has been such a spectacular season. And people have not been showing up like this at the Holman Center maybe since 1979. Being out there on Sunday, there were a few empty seats there, and I think they finished 100 or 100 or few, of a sellout. I'm sure there were some businesses, corporations that bought tickets that they weren't completely full. But that place, if it seats 10, there was 9,000 to 9,500 in there. And what really struck me was getting there about 90 minutes before the game, and obviously it's a beautiful day, that doesn't hurt. But for a 5 or 6 block radius around the arena, everything was packed. The ballyhoo was packed. Everybody had Indiana State gear on. You've got an entire region that has re-embraced this team and that university. And for the people of Terre Haute and the Wabash Valley, I want that to continue as long as possible. So they got to get through today and tomorrow. I think if they get to Sunday, and especially depending on whom they would play, if it's Drake or Bradley, who are both pretty good teams, especially Drake, where in other words, a loss Sunday would not count as a bad loss, I think Indiana State, I hope, has done enough to get in. Your point is well made. They're going to play 6.5 guys or 7 at most. And they try to manage minutes. They're frankly very Esposito-like in terms of defense. In other words, they are focusing on what they do offensively, which in theory limits them from getting into foul trouble. That's what caught them at Michigan State. It's just the physicality of Michigan State got Kent and Avila into foul trouble. That is a concern once you get to the NCAA tournament. I'm sure it's a concern this weekend for Josh Schertz and staff, but maybe a little less brand of physicality there where you can get by with Avila and Kent. The other thing I'll tell you is this as well, and I noted this to John a couple of times during the game. Indiana State and Avila are getting a little bit of superstar treatment on some calls. At least they did on Sunday. And I go, okay, that's a good place to be in, because Avila is one of the best players in the league, because literally of their 7 guys that play, 6 got some sort of all-conference notation. Maybe they get the benefit of the 1-seed whistle. I hope that's the case as well. They'll throw in some zone. For Indiana State, it simply comes down to if they make jump shots. And they do that at a rate better than almost anybody else in the country. They were averaging, I think they're averaging 11 threes per game that they are making, 341 makes in their 31 games so far this season. They're a sight to behold. They're a heck of a lot of fun. And I hope that we don't have to sweat it out with them for the next 7 days.
Yeah, I think if they get in the tournament, and boy, if they could ever get a win, I think they'll be one of the darlings of that opening weekend. I really do feel that way. Well, I guess it's the first time we've had John. I need to ask: were the rose petals and the red carpet rolled out for JMV? How was the scene as he went back home there on Sunday?
So I got alerted on the way over that our buddy Brent Compton, that runs Pacesetter Sports, which is, it is the spot for all of your team gear, your school gear, shoes, whatever the case may be. It is one of the great sporting goods stores in the state of Indiana, and clearly in Terre Haute. So he puts on the marquee, "Welcome home, JMV and Rakestraw." So we are. So I'm like, all right, we're not going to go the new bougie route, exit 11 by Rose-Hulman. We're going the main drive. We're getting off at exit 7 so we can go see this and take a picture. And so that was our entree into Terre Haute, was seeing our name on the marquee on US 41 heading into town. Somehow it got out that I am an alum, so I want to make sure I pointed this out. I don't want to be a fraud. I am not an alum of Indiana State University. I happened to spend a little bit of time while I was in high school. Like every summer, I had a different camp in Terre Haute. I went to shooting camp at Rose-Hulman after my freshman year. I went to summer honors at Indiana State after my sophomore year. I went to Hoosier Boys State after my junior year. Those last two were on the ISU campus, and I stayed in the Cromwell dorm both times, but I am not an alumnus. If they want to bestow upon me an honorary degree, I will happily donate some money to make that happen.
George O'Leary resume here.
The honorary doctorate. I love that. Yeah.
JMV is the alum, which is a story in itself that he actually graduated.
Yeah.
I am just the hanger-on riding his coattails for a good time in Terre Haute.
Greg Rakestraw with us. Well, I'm glad you guys had fun and they got the win and everything else. Greg Rakestraw with us here on the Payless.
So Andy, let me jump in and ruin it for you here.
Sure.
So if Kevin and I have road trip to Notre Dame, and if JMV and I have road trip to Indiana State, Sweeney, where are you and I going to road trip to?
Here we go.
Let's
go.
I guess we're going to what? Jeffersonville and Evansville Harrison this weekend? Is that what we're doing?
Well,
the regional
I'm a little busy,
well,
but I would say if Jeffersonville wins, there's a good chance I have the Red Devils next weekend.
Okay.
Is just as a heads up.
Well,
hey, now.
Well, hey, there you go. Obviously, I'm only looking at Class 4A, and it's going to be such a great weekend of boys basketball here in the state of Indiana. Fishers, Kokomo, obviously that's a big one. That game or other games, what are you zeroing in? I guess what interests you the most as we go into so many good matchups here in regional play?
Yeah, the 4A matchups are tremendous, and maybe even the semi-state matchups might even be better. You had a couple of slight upsets, nothing that I would say was of the monumental variety. The biggest upset I think would be New Pal beating Greenfield Central, but again, New Pal also has a star player in Julius Gizzi. I know Braylon Mullins got hurt during the course of that game. They played to a close game in the regular season anyway. That might be the biggest upset from a record standpoint. Not like New Pal doesn't have a great. I think they had 18 wins going into the sectional, and I'll see them tomorrow at Southport Fieldhouse. Avon beating Terre Haute North was a slight surprise. Up north, Mishawaka beating South Bend Riley was a slight surprise. But you've got a lot of really good teams still left playing. I'll have the games at Southport tomorrow. So Ben Davis and New Pal in game number 1. Center Grove and Franklin in game number 2. That game goes to MyIndyTV. All games are streamed free of charge at ihsaatv.org this weekend. There's other great stories, like, for example, Indianapolis, Washington is playing in a regional game for the first time in 29 years as they take on Guerin Catholic. But it's just a lot of really good teams. And the other story, Andy and Kevin, from last week was as you looked at these highlights and pictures from across the state of Indiana, man, a lot of these places were fire marshal full. You had a sellout at Noblesville, you had a sellout at Greenfield Central. Guerin Catholic was absolutely packed. The game that I had featuring Cathedral and Lawrence North, it wasn't a complete sellout, but it was close. We're probably about 90 or 95% full. The shots from Lagodi for Bar Even Orleans that played a 5 overtime game. All of a sudden those towns multiply in size to come support their team. So that was so wonderful to see last weekend. Was just, again, Hoosier hysteria was in full bloom last Saturday. Let's put it that way.
Rick, I'm glad you brought that up. It certainly felt that way for myself, like as a casual observer. And I was sitting there on the couch Saturday night, and all of a sudden I hear this roaring comeback from Evan Haywood and Brebeuf, and I'm like, boom, ihsatv.org, and there I am watching overtime, both overtimes there. It was, first off, outstanding access, and then that scene was unbelievable, like you said. I don't know, maybe like the presence of social media had me feeling that way, and you just laid it out beautifully of how many sectional sites. It just had the feel that like there was more intrigue, more hype, more energy. You brought up, what was it, the Massena-Sinaloa sectional? Was that the crazy, all the all the final
Three
second
consecutive
shots.
buzzer beaters Tuesday and Wednesday night, correct?
Yeah.
Once in a while, yep.
Yeah, I don't know. It had a feel of a pretty climactic and exciting sectional weekend. And again, maybe it's just because social media offers you a little bit more access to all that.
But you know what? It's a fair point. And I think that is also a sign, as you see so many butts in seats, in some corners there has been this concern, well, if they stream games, nobody will come to them. No, if they stream games, people know you're there, and they're going to want to come watch. That, because trust me, there are multiple places you can watch Kokomo and Fishers. We have a broadcast we are producing via ISC Sports Network. Rob Brown, Pete Smith will have the call, and I bet you there will be about 9,000 people there to watch that game tomorrow afternoon at Newcastle.
And, Reg, I'm glad you brought up Washington. Kyle Neddenriep had a great piece in the Star earlier this week. Certainly the rich history, and going back a lot to the Washington Ben Davis iconic game at Hinkle from the mid-'90s there. But that was a great piece to read. And they get Guerin, right? Washington gets Guerin coming up tomorrow?
Correct. And I think Guerin has to be the favorite now in the southern half of 3A, if not in totality, just because, again, 3A was so wide open. I'm not sure I've ever seen a division in my years of doing this, the last 15 years, where I've been kind of covering from a statewide perspective, where I'm like, I really don't know who the favorite is, because Guerin returned so many pieces from last year's runner-up team, and they nearly beat a really established and really good Northwood team in the state championship game. Once they got past Brebeuf, they probably got to be the favorite. But again, Washington's got a 6'11" center in Clem Butler, so that is not a guarantee for the Golden Eagles tomorrow afternoon.
And just as a follow-up, Greg Rakestraw with us. We talked about this earlier in the week. The play by Ben Grissom, I believe that was his name, the senior, for Guerin to throw the ball over his back and to find a kid for a layup there against Brebeuf. What is there any? I mean, you've been calling these games for decades. Have you ever called anything like that? What did you make of that play? I mean, that's one of those that nationally that made a lot of news here in the state of Indiana.
The crazy thing is there was another play like that in this state the same day, just at a different level. Did you see the end of the Ball State Western Michigan game?
I did.
Last week.
It was unbelievable. Yep.
And so it's fitting I make this reference, and this will make Kevin smile. It was almost like watching 34 CYO soccer. Everybody followed the ball, and understandably so. Everybody was chasing the guy with the ball with just a couple of seconds left to go. He just tosses it to a spot and hope he finds a teammate. Well, because everybody had rotated forward, all of a sudden there's dude cherry picking, the guy that inbounded the basketball, back by the rim, and nobody is there. And so, no, I've not seen something like that. But again, half court versus full court. But something very similar happened at Ball State, but it's a wild play. There's no doubt about that.
Herding cattle is what it looked like there at the end of that one.
That may be the new name of the play, is herding cattle. That might be a good way to classify that inbounds pass.
I was going to say, we'll see if Bobby Allen can insert that into the playbook here coming up tomorrow against Washington. Rake, enjoy Southport. I know it's a busy, busy time of year, but what a glorious time of year as well. Thank you for the combo.
You got it, guys.
Greg Rakestraw right there. That presented by CarX. Again, boys, regionals. Remember, the regional now just one game.
Yep.
We've changed that here in the last couple of years. We'll get 2 in the semi-state round coming up next weekend. And again, the unique nature to Indiana State, which we led off with there with Rakestraw, the Missouri Valley plays their conference tournament about as early as anybody. They want to be in the CBS national window coming up on Sunday. That'll actually feed into Indiana and Michigan State on Sunday. So, again, to set it up for Indiana State at Arch Madness, they will play Missouri State today at 1 o'clock. That is the quarterfinal round. They're favored by 9.5 for what it's worth. They did beat Missouri State twice this season, but the game last month, they were down at halftime and won that game just by 2. If you look at what a potential path would be to winning Arch Madness, you're going to go quad 3 game today, quad 3 game tomorrow, no matter who you play, Belmont or Northern Iowa, and then we'll see about Sunday. The goal would be quad 1 in Drake because you want to help your resume and you don't want to hurt it too much if you lose that game. So that's what the next few days look like. All of these 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon games for Indiana State, ESPN Plus today. Again, that is at 1 o'clock.
Comes down to this. Win 3 games, you're in the NCAA tournament. Just win 3 games and you're in.
I still think a loss on Sunday could be enough.
Yeah, well, then you have to wait till the big boys play. I hate to say that. The Power Six, and you have to see
It
who
does
wins
seem like this
and
is
who
a year,
steals a
though,
bid.
Andy, where we don't have as many bid stealers.
Are you talking in the major conferences?
Like if you're talking like the Mountain West, for example, that's like a 5-bid league if you look at it. So just as long as one of those 5 teams win the conference tournament, you're good. Sure, you do want to root for probably Gonzaga to make sure that they win the West Coast Conference, but obviously you need to avoid the crazy. I'm trying to think of a major team that's done it. Wasn't there a year in the SEC where some team wasn't going to?
Well, South Carolina did it. Now that was with Frank Martin. I think
I'm thinking
did
of
it.
Georgia doing it one year. Maybe you got to go way back.
Yeah, and maybe this year people have said, "Oh, Ohio State could make a run in the Big Ten," thinking with the coaching change.
But what about
and everything.
IU?
Yeah, Ohio State could make a run. Big Ten.
Take that, Liam McNeely. You don't want to be a part of this?
You don't want to be a part of this,
Watch
run?
this.
Joke's on you, McNeely. Yeah, go to Kansas and all those championships and Final Fours and Big 12 championships. It's Indiana basketball.
Bill Self do enough breaking the Hoosiers back with that comeback win in December? He started the break, really, right? He started the big crack of the egg, and then...
Did he?
Remember how that game ended? That was a wild second half.
You're
Kansas.
looking at if you're Indiana State and you say, okay, you get all the way, you lose. Let's say you lose on a game-winning shot, you lose by 1 against someone like a Drake. You're looking at kind of major conference teams. You're looking at that are on the outside right now that could play their way in. You're looking at teams like Colorado, Pittsburgh, Penny Hardaway, and Memphis. Iowa, Providence, St. John's, Utah, perhaps Virginia, Wake Forest, teams like that are very much on the bubble. Virginia goes, they win a game or two in the ACC tournament, they'll be in. They might be a 10 seed, but they'll be in the NCAA tournament. St. John's is very bubblicious, Providence as well. So it's those sorts of teams. But to me, I'm almost dismissing that conversation. No offense to you. I'm saying go win 3 games and take care of it. And you never want to sit there for a week. You don't want the committee to look at your resume next to a double-digit loss SEC, Big 10, Big 12 team. You just don't want that situation.
Too is any major, if Indiana State wins multiple games in the Missouri Valley tournament, it does nothing to help their resume.
Absolutely nothing.
Outside of avoiding a bad loss. If a major conference team, if Butler goes out,
it's at least a quad 2
win,
and
wins 2 games in the Big East tournament, right now I think if you look at the Big East bracket, it would be like Xavier, UConn. You don't think a neutral court win over UConn would help Butler? And Butler is probably not the best example. They probably still need more on the resume, but something like that. If you're a Big Ten team, if you're in that, if Michigan State gets on the 8-9 line, or isn't Iowa? I feel like Iowa's flirting around the bubble. If they get on the 8-9 line and they upset Purdue as the 1 seed in the quarterfinal,
they're in the NCAA tournament.
A week from today, that's a huge, huge win. Go back to Indiana a few years ago. Remember, they had the furious comeback with good Xavier Johnson against Michigan in that 8-9 game. They drew Illinois then as the 1 seed in that quarterfinal game. They get I think Illinois either missed a last-second layup or IU had a late layup. It was one of the two, and boom, it's a huge boost to Indiana's resume. And they ended up, being in the play-in. And if you lose that game, if you're in the play-in, you're probably not in the tournament. So that's what the next week is all about here. So again, Indiana State coming up 1 o'clock today. We'll continue the basketball chatter. I still think it's going to be, and I don't think we should lose sight of it, it's going to be quite the scene inside of Mackey coming up on Sunday afternoon to celebrate certainly one of the greatest players in program history and really one of the best we've seen in this part of the country and college basketball in general in quite some time. For Zach Edey and his senior day, we'll get a little NFL madness with Joel A. Erickson coming up at 9 o'clock. Before that, ugly starts, a star making plays late, another loss for the Pacers. Morning Checkdown.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, March 11th and 12th.
Yeah, let's get to your Pacers. 113-111 losers last night in Cambridge. Minnesota walks in. Boy, a heartbreaking loss. The final seconds, amazing. Anthony Edwards, 44 points. He had the block at the end of the game and everything else. Post-game, Rick Carlisle. Now, he talked about Anthony Edwards, but he talked about something we've mentioned a bunch, and that is slow starts, every minute counting to these very, very important games.
Well, I mean, Edwards' shot making was, next level. And even when we double teamed him, he got away from us. So, look, he's a great player, and that's why it's every second of every minute of the game matters. Anything you can do to get even slightly ahead or stay even or stay close to even to start the game, makes a big difference in the long run. So, just it's a tough lesson, but one that we got to take our medicine and learn from.
Yeah, and they haven't learned yet. What was it? About the 7:29 mark, 14-5. Carlisle, yet again, seemingly every game, having to call that early timeout. Up next for the Pacers on the road Sunday, 6 o'clock. That's the tip-off, 5:30. Our coverage here on The Fan. They're in Orlando. And, boy, we've talked about Orlando, a tough matchup for the Pacers, especially now Indiana going to be out at least the next 4 games without Benedict Mathurin.
Better from Tyrese Halliburton, but Andy, 5 of 17 from 3 the last 2 nights. He had 5 turnovers last night. Now, my expectations weren't very high for last night with Jaden McDaniels, who I think is a great defender and provides a ton of length, but still, it's been positive steps, but I don't want to act like we're back to normal Halliburton just yet with what he has shot from the 3, really, ever since All-Star Sunday night. Okay, we mentioned Indiana State again. That is 1 o'clock coming up today. ESPN Plus for that one. It might be on Bally as well. I remember some of those Arch Madness games being on Bally, so check that out. Check your listings for that. Other college basketball, it's a heavy Big Ten slate on Sunday. We mentioned Purdue and Wisconsin here. Is Wisconsin still not won a road game in over a month?
Yeah, they. I believe so. Now, they did win last night. It was at home against Rutgers, but they trailed. Like middle part of that game, I can't remember the score, but I'm looking at Twitter because I'm not watching Rutgers, Wisconsin. I didn't want to put myself to sleep at 7:45.
Yeah,
I'm
Nikki Sweeney appreciates that.
I'm an old man. I'm not that old of a man. But, they were down to Rutgers. It was like, Wisconsin's not going to make this, is not going to make the tournament unless they do something in the Big Ten. But they did come back and win. I think Purdue lays it on Wisconsin.
12:30 tip on Fox. Again, it should be quite the scene to celebrate the career of Zach Edey and obviously a terrific senior class around him as well. So this will conclude the Big Ten slate for them. Indiana tries to make it 4 in a row. That is a CBS game, 4:30. Michigan State did win on Wednesday. They scored 53, though, in the game. They had lost 3 in a row before that. So for Indiana, I believe it's Xavier Johnson, Anthony Walker. I'm trying to think who else is out of eligibility.
I believe that's it.
Is that it?
I was going to ask you.
And I guess Kel'el Ware, the thought there is he's obviously going pro.
And I think, listen, Indiana fans get it. Mackenzie Mbako's not going to be back. Trey Galloway, to me, is the interesting one. Like, if you made a poll right now of Indiana fans, that Galloway is back in college basketball at IU, back in college basketball elsewhere, or moves on from college basketball, I wonder what the breakdown would be of what people think Galloway can do.
I think there's some chatter he's playing college basketball at a school that IU fans don't like.
That's the reason I ask it. Yes. Boy, that'd be a punch in the gut. He's been a good player. Galloway's such a good complimentary player. He's just been put in a bad spot this year. He really has. Boy, if they had a really good guard to go along with Galloway so he didn't have so much on his plate, having to play the best defense, having to run the point, having to score, has not been a great year for him. I'm interested to see what he does. I really am.
Son of an Indiana high school basketball coach, I think he would probably like watching what Matt Painter has done at Bloomington. CBS Sports, is that what I'm seeing here? Larry's saying for Indiana State. Is that right? I thought it was.
No, I'm only seeing ESPN Plus.
Okay. Well,
yeah, that's what I'm seeing.
Check your local listings. Do they still send that out? Do you still get the TV guide?
It's the oldest thing you've said today.
God, no wonder I've got gray hair.
I've said bunk today, or bunk 3 times this week, and you've said check your local listings 4 times.
You guys are complaining about the weather. My knees hurt. My back aches.
How is your
times
back?
Mike?
How is your back, by the way?
Well, have you seen me stretch it into the studio?
I haven't seen you have the heat pad. We haven't had to stretch you out during commercial breaks.
I've been on a vitamin craze.
God, can you sound more like a geriatric right now?
Maddie literally burst out laughing last night seeing how many pills I threw on the counter.
Do you have?
And I've got a poor gag reflex, so man, I'm almost puking taking some of these pills.
Do you have like the weekly like pill tabs now? Where you can,
I don't have that.
It's Thursday.
You know what?
$2 on Amazon. You got to get one.
The thought has crossed my mind.
Listen, it's $2 on Amazon.
So you've got one?
I had one for a little while, and then I did. I had one for a little while,
and then you decided to get young again, or what happened?
No, the the little tabs that pull up for a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Like 3 of them broke, so I threw it away. I never got it.
$2 on Amazon.
I don't know.
There you go. Yeah, Rosie's very confused. Like, Daddy, are you still sick? I'm like,
are
no,
you okay?
Rosie, these are it's vitamins versus medicine.
You're right. Those vitamins are huge too.
Huge.
Yeah, those are huge.
I mean,
pills.
I can't imagine a horse taking it.
This might be the low point of our show.
Fred throws out here the Arch Madness games yesterday were on Bally, so figure it out.
Good.
1 o'clock today.
You don't need us. You don't need Radio Gas Bags to tell you where to find your damn game.
Just trying to help out Sycamore Nation.
Guys are talking about vitamins and then confused about where the channels are at for the games. You guys do sound like my dad right now.
Log into ESPN.
I'm confused on the optimism in Bloomington for their basketball program right now. Quite the headline yesterday. We'll chat about that on the other side.
It's JMV for your 14 Central Indiana CarX locations. Lifetime brake pads, $109.99. Oil changes starting at $24.99. Find the location nearest you at CarX.com today.
The Indy 1500 Gun and Knife Show is this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. For hunting, sporting, and personal protection gear, visit the Indy 1500 Gun and Knife Show.
Don't want the worry of maintaining your furnace or air conditioner? Join B&W's Premier Club today.
Go to B+W.com. B&W Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Drains is your trusted local independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
At Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance, we're good at insurance. But not just any insurance. We're good at...
No.
Did you forget the parking brake? Yes, you forgot the parking brake. Insurance. When the forecast calls for cheese ball-sized hail...
The Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I appreciate you hanging out with us on this Friday. Take it slow out there. I know it's going to rain a bunch today, so I'm sure people are fired up for that. You know, it's such great weather. Speaking of being old, it's such great weather, you know, sitting outside on, what was it, Monday and Tuesday. But this weekend, a little rainy, but that is March. Tons of college basketball to watch, and that's what your boy here is going to be doing for the next couple days. Reminder, Joel A. Erickson, Colts beat writer from the Star. He'll join us coming up at 9 o'clock. You know, KB, you mentioned, and we're going to do a little Liam McNeeley. For people that don't know, he was the lone commit from the high school ranks for your boy Mike Woodson. And
the next Larry Bird is what Hoosier Nation was calling him.
And it has been several months he has been committed. He actually did even sign. He signed the national letter of intent, which not every college basketball player does. He's been asked out of that, and we talked a lot in the first hour about it. I thought you brought up a great point of, you know, whether it was intended or not, it was the day after, basically, you know, 24 hours, 30 hours, whatever it was, after Indiana put out there through the media, hey, Mike Woodson's going to be back for year number 4, and then he decommits. And if you don't know, Bill Self's got him. So Bill Self has essentially stolen him. That is what everybody thinks. And now, you know, it's not sustainable for a program to go out and get 6-7 guys. And we had Rab Johns on, and he believes, you know, they need 5 or 6 guys from the transfer portal, and I believe that to be true. I just don't know how sustainable that is. We talked about Trey Galloway. You know, he plays college basketball, not at Indiana. If that's the case next year, Xavier Johnson's gone, Kel'el Ware's gone. I believe, obviously, Mackenzie Mbako is gone, and I'm like you, man. I don't know where the positivity is. You know, now if you're Indiana, there might be some fringe top 100 kids that might be out there, 3 stars, maybe a couple 4 stars that might be left on the table, but it's going to be transfer portal. And boy, you know, next year, if you get off to a slow start, if this offseason doesn't go well, and right now doesn't look like it's going to go well, I use the T word. It's going to be toxic next year, Indiana basketball. That possibility is absolutely on the table.
You know, Andy, as a college basketball program, you've kind of got 3 ways how you can build. You can build through recruiting high school kids, certainly. You can build through your internal roster, development of those players. You know, you see a lot of programs, certainly, that, you know, you don't really hear from a guy year 1, year 2, and boom, all of a sudden year 3 and 4. Absolute, you know, key pieces to you. And in a way, I don't think it's the proper way to build, but you could probably support through the portal. That might be the better way to put it. Of course, as I made the analogy yesterday, the portal can help you out at 2:30 at the bar, or it can, you know, create something that stays with you forever if you catch my drift at 2:30 at the bar. So those are the 3 areas. And think about the last 12 months for Indiana basketball. An absolute swing and a miss in the portal this time last year, leading into the offseason. When you tried to make efforts there to help out your roster, you totally swung and missed there. Your recruiting for the 2024 class is now a goose egg after you swung and missed on Boogie Flan.
Which is unbelievable. You don't even have like 1 4-star there.
On Derek Queen, and now swung and missed on Liam McNeeley. And I would say maybe the most alarming aspect is you've swung and missed on your internal roster development. Who do you look at and say, important piece for 2024-2025 on your roster? And you feel like borderline Big Ten, you know, candidate. Like, here's a dozen-point scorer. Again, you've got questions about Malik Renew's future. You've got questions about Trey Galloway's future. And, you know, even like this time last year, you might say, oh, boy, you know, Caleb Banks has had a couple sparks. And whatever, you feel like there could be something, you know, CJ Gunn just needs some more minutes and needs some more shot.
None of that has worked out.
You don't say that about like Gabe Cupps, you know, of, okay, nice freshman year. You put the ball more in his hands, et cetera, et cetera. There's a borderline all Big Ten type of player for you. So all 3 of those places, the high school recruiting, the portal, and the in-roster development, none of it. And we have Jeff Rabjohns on yesterday, and he tells us in the 9 o'clock hour, he would say that there's no Big Ten team that has more available to them from an NIL standpoint than Indiana. And the job, and I believe it, to me, the job, when you add up NIL support, facilities, passion from the fan base, when you add up those three, you cannot find me 10 other jobs in college basketball that you'd rather take than Indiana. To me, you have all of that sitting there when you walk into it, and it's a day and age where it shouldn't be hard to be one of 68. It shouldn't be hard to build just a somewhat consistent winner. Like let's not even talk in the Final Four round.
We're not talking make a run deep into March. We're talking about getting to the tournament and winning a game at this point.
And now we're talking about a program that in 8 years has won 2 NCAA tournament games, and one of those was a Wyoming play-in game.
And the other one was Kent State? That's what it is, right?
Another stray for Kent State here.
Poor Kent State caught a stray from Reb Johns yesterday. You know the other thing that hasn't been talked about, and I agree with everything you're saying. I would say this, though. Kel'el Ware was a nothing at Oregon last year. He went to Indiana, and he's really good. I mean, Kel'el Ware is really good. Again, he was not, if he could have, went to the NBA, he would have done so last year coming out of Oregon as a 5-star kid. He did not. So he went to Bloomington, and I could make the argument. Let me make the argument, but I'm going to bash Woody, so just stick with me. That he did get better, that he has showcased himself to be an NBA player. I could make the case that Mackenzie Mbako, listen, there are 5 stars that don't work out. I used to follow Kentucky basketball. They have Aaron Bradshaw, who everyone thought was going to be the number 1 pick. That dude can't play right now. He doesn't get on the floor. Justin Edwards, a 5-star kid who is thought to be a top 5, 6, 7, 8 kid this year. He doesn't play this year. So it happens to the best of them. Mackenzie Mbako has got better, has he not? I mean, he was struggling early on, and maybe he's a little bit out of position because of Woody. We can get into that at another time. But I look at Ware, and I look at Mackenzie Mbako, and I could make the argument, okay, those guys got better. Let me go back to last year. Jalen Hood-Schifino comes in as a 5-star and as a first-round draft pick. Trace Jackson-Davis, people were wanting to see his game. Mike Woodson could very well sell, hey, TJD got a heck of a lot better under our tutelage here at Indiana. Okay, so I'm giving you the positives. He's got 0 commits. He hasn't capitalized on any of that. He didn't capitalize on Hood-Schifino. He didn't capitalize on the end of TJD. He's not capitalizing on Mackenzie Mbako in the NIL deal that got him here and his growth of his game and Kel'el Ware. To me, that's also what would be frustrating is all the things you're talking about and then all the good things that you have as an Indiana fan. Mike Woodson seemingly isn't capitalizing on those either. And boy, that's the thing that punches you right in the gut.
I might be a little biased with this statement, but I think I'm a pretty big believer in it. If I am the head coach at Indiana or the head coach at Purdue, and I know what this state produces on an annual basis, I would almost have kind of a hard and fast rule of we don't leave a recruiting class without getting 1 kid from this state. 1 kid from this state every year. And again, it doesn't need to be, and the state doesn't always produce, the Flory Badunga, the top 5 player in a class or something like that. But there is an ability to find, whatever, the 89th kid that's the 4-star recruit, the 123rd kid that's a 3-star recruit. And I feel like this state has a proven track record that kid has got a pretty decent hit rate, or that kid's got the ability to give you more than whatever, maybe the random 3 or 4-star from, Missouri or some other state. And at the very least, Andy, I think doing that sends a message to the state of Indiana that we're still going to have inroads here. It might not be 3 kids from and I'm not saying you need to solely recruit the state of Indiana, but you're reminding the AAU programs, the high school programs, and just you're reminding people that matter in the state of like, no. We're still going to have a footprint here to help you out. And, Trey Galloway, I think, is a perfect example of it. Trey Galloway clearly helps you out. Was he the highly ranked recruit? No, not at all. But over the course of 4 years, is that an important piece to trying to build something?
And not everyone has to score 18 a game to be a valuable piece to the puzzle.
And that's where I think the fallback helps you out to where you're not sitting here like IU is and you've swung and missed on all the big recruits in 2024. And now you got the goose egg. Like, it's embarrassing, and it just hurts your general roster building as well. Whereas if you've got a little fallback options, which I know it sounds kind of rude to call them that, but still, you could sustain some things as a program, and you can have some stuff in the cupboard that doesn't leave you totally barren. You don't think Mason Gillis is an important piece for Purdue? Was Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith top 50 kids? No. So I think that is I believe, I'd have to double check it. I think C.J. Gunn was an Archie Miller recruit. Mike Woodson has not had a single recruit from the state of Indiana. And clearly nothing here in 2024.
That's
and
a shocking stat.
We'll see how 2025 plays out. But I just think, and again, I wear a heavily biased, I've lived in this state my entire life cap. So I'm biased towards the basketball players in this state. But I think, again, there is a proven track record. Hell, we talked about it with IUPUI, with Craig Rakestraw earlier in this hour, that even the fringe top 100 guys out of this state, they can help you. And they don't leave the cupboard totally bare, which is where you're at right now.
Yeah, with Indiana, I just don't know what they are. I just don't know. I'm saying that you can't be all portal. You have to sprinkle.
And I'm not saying you need to be all state of Indiana. I want to make that very clear.
Well, no, but they're not state of Indiana. They're not portal kings, okay? And again, I'm not sure, look at Arkansas this year, that you even want to be that. But they're also not the one-and-done factory, okay? They're not a Kentucky or a Duke or, like that. And they're not a development like Purdue or Tony Bennett at Virginia has been, where, some good players are going to go in there and you may sit a year. It might be until, middle part of your sophomore year into the junior year before you start to blossom as a player. So they're definitely not that. And, I wonder, and I know, listen, so many people were DMing the Peegs message board last night, which you love, okay? I just love it.
Yeah, you don't need to drink coffee for a week. You just scroll through the Peegs message board right now.
I wonder how hard Mike Woodson is working at the recruiting game. It is not the NBA. A general manager does not do this for you. You have to, this is at least 50% of the job is building a roster and that sort of thing. And then, this is probably for next week, but I wonder how much his words matter. I mean, when Mike Woodson's talking about, I believe in post play and I don't want to play 4 out, 1 in. Well, you have a stretch forward right now in Liam McNeeley who's looking saying, really? Because that's what I'm good at. Wait a minute. And sometimes your words matter as well. It's a mess. Regardless, it's a mess. If you're Scott Dawson, 24 hours after, you leak out, hey, he's going to be back for year 4, and you knew what the kickback was going to be. A 5-star kid says peace, and he's been with your program for 6 months.
I'd pay a lot of money to be in the room with Pam Whitten, Quinn Buckner, Scott Dawson, whoever else needs Mike Woodson, whoever else is in that room, and to look at Mike Woodson, look at Quinn Buckner, whoever you need to look at, and say, where's the optimism in our program moving forward?
Sell it to me. Sell it to me now. Right. I'm with you.
And I'm at a loss for what that answer would be. And I'm trying to be in the debate class. I'm trying to be on Mike Woodson's side of the debate, okay? I'm trying to drum it up. And I got nothing. Absolutely nothing for you. And just simple ROI. Like, where is the return on the investment that we have, oozing puddles of resources? And this is the return that we're getting. And I'll echo a statement that I said, several times throughout this season. If you're 25 years old, living in this country, Indiana University basketball is a middle-of-the-pack Big Ten team. How do you live with that if you're the powers that be down there in Bloomington? Back to the Pacers here on the other side. Joel A. Erickson talking Colts in 10.
Spring and in.
The Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Coming up top of the hour, we'll talk some Colts football, free agency next week. Legal, let me put the quotations around it. Legal tampering coming your way on Monday. Joel A. Erickson from the Star will join us. We'll do that here at the top of the hour. All right, let's go on out to the phone lines. You want to do that, Mark? You want to do that, KB? Curt joins us. He was at the Pacer game last night. Curt, fire away, buddy. How are you?
Hey, good morning, guys. I'm usually calling you from Arkansas, but today I'm calling you from Fishers. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's good to be at the game.
What did you notice? Yeah, go ahead. What did you notice?
Yeah, a couple of things besides the slow starts that KB and you were talking about earlier. It just seems like the first half of the season, they were so fun to watch on offense, right? It was so free-flowing. And the ball just does not seem to have much movement. And I don't think it's any one person, but there are times where, Siakam's feeling like he has to carry the load, and it's kind of one-on-one, watch him go to work. And so that was one thing I noticed. And then the second, boy, there was some really bad officiating last night. I mean, I don't remember all the rules about what you can challenge and what you can't, but I know there was one where Turner was taking it to the hole and looked like a foul, and Gobert, they reviewed it, they challenged it, and then they reversed it and called offensive foul on Turner. But there were about three others that clearly, the fans were going nuts over when watching those replays where clearly we should have had some fouls called against us. So anyway, I'm just curious your thoughts on the how many you get in the game. I couldn't remember what that process was.
Curt, great to hear your voice. Appreciate that, and hope Fisher's is treating you well. Yeah, we talked a little bit about the challenges earlier. Is it 2 you get a game, and if you get it right, you keep it? I should probably brush up on that. Chris Air usually does a pretty good job.
I believe you get 1, and then you get another one if you win.
Has Minnesota won their first one, so they kept it, I guess?
Yeah,
that sound right?
And the Pacers lost the Miles Turner one, which I hate this for Turner. Sorry, JMV. I thought it was kind of a weak move by him. I was fine with the offensive foul early in the game on Turner. The one I wasn't fine with, and whether you could challenge it, obviously the Pacers didn't have any. Pacers are down 105-104. Halliburton goes to the bucket. He gets hit in the head by Gobert. And to me, they didn't look at it. I know there was no challenge. Carlisle didn't have one, but to me, that was a clear flagrant foul.
Again, college basketball, you challenge you go to the monitor for everything. I don't know why that you couldn't go there or why they didn't go there. Maybe it's a better way to put it. I didn't think the Pacers got a great whistle last night at home. Yeah, to the ball sticking standpoint, certainly. I think, Siakam is very gifted offensively, but Andy, when you do throw the ball to him, and he starts to get into his offensive rhythm, it is a 5 to 6 second ordeal. Now, again, he's a very good offensive player, but it largely goes to him, and either it's a bucket or you're not going to get into some offensive flow after throwing the ball to him. That's kind of how it operates with him. And look, all of this is true. I don't think you were ever going to keep up the torrid pace offensively, but still, I go back to the other end of the floor. Last night is another night where you play a team and they exceed their average. It happens seemingly night and night. Anthony Edwards goes for a season high. He's a great player. These guys should not just be showing up and playing the Pacers and be like, oh, yeah, there's a good chance he gets a season high tonight. Dude's played, 40, 50 games this year, and he gets a season high against you. San Antonio, their third best night of the season. The Raptors, their most points scored in 20-some games. It happens far too often against the Pacers to where defensively teams light you up or have one of their best nights of the year. Let's talk some Colts free agency. The madness begins certainly next week. Joel Erickson on that next.
The Ride with It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, final hour for us, I should say. 9 o'clock hour, as always, hanging out in the DriveHubler.com studios. KB and Andy hanging out with you on this wet Friday. So I guess what am I to say? Take it slow and stay safe on the roads today. Appreciate Mark Jaynes joining us earlier in the show. Greg Rakestraw as well. You miss those conversations, miss our Pacer conversation, a ton of IU, as Liam McNeeley says, see ya, peace out to Mike Woodson and IU. I'm sure he'll go hang out with Kansas and Bill Self. All those conversations up. Podcast Center 1075thefan.com or wherever you download your podcast. All right, let's talk some Colts football. It's going out to the Payless Liquors hotline. Joel A. Erickson joining us from the IndyStar. Joel, a good morning to you. Appreciate you joining us here on this Friday. You know, listening to you and Nate on the podcast, you guys have talked about it, you've written about it being, will the Colts, should Chris Ballard, will he be aggressive in free agency? Obviously, we can talk about L'Jarius Sneed, a part of that, a trade as well. What do you foresee here in the next few days? Guys that the Colts might be linked to? Do you actually think that Chris Ballard will be aggressive, I guess?
I think I don't necessarily know that he's going to suddenly, go like on a spending spree in free agency. I don't just don't think that's the way he views it. But some of the deals that we've seen in the past, everything from I do think with the cap space, I do think there's the possibility of like a DeForest Buckner style trade that would be sort of the Sneed type of thing, all the way down through, some of the deals they've done for pass rushers and corners over the years. I think all of that stuff is definitely possible. I keep coming back to him saying, we have a quarterback on a rookie deal that gives us flexibility moving forward way back in January. And I think that's stuck in my head all off season so far.
Joel A. Erickson from the Stars with us. NFL's version of March Madness about to begin, coming up next week. All right, Joel, Kenny Moore, Grover Stewart, Julian Blackmon. I would be surprised if Kenny Moore wasn't back. I think I'd be mildly surprised if Grover Stewart wasn't back. Julian Blackmon, it wouldn't shock me, given the safety market, if all of a sudden he was not back. Thoughts on any of those three and my opinions on them?
I think I pretty much agree with you in all three cases. Julian Blackmon is an interesting case because you can probably get Blackmon back. Just there's so many safeties, as you already kind of alluded to. There's so many safeties on the market right now, and you can probably get him back for a very reasonable deal. But at the same time, if the Colts decided, Julian's had some injury issues, there's so many safeties on the market, we can get another veteran in this spot that maybe we think, could be a little more durable, however they want to look at it, that wouldn't surprise me. The secondary in general, especially the safety position, with as many guys as are on the market right now, is the one to watch for me, I think.
Again, he's Joel A. Erickson. He's with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Joel, tremendous coverage of the Colts for the Indianapolis Star. Joel, you retweeted a former colleague of yours, Nick Underhill, who covers the Saints. I think it was yesterday. And I feel like this is a question that some fans ask around this time each year, and I was hoping you could, dumb it down or maybe give us a little elementary level to it. The tweet read this from Nick Underhill. There's cap issues and cap hell. Difference between the two is how much money the owner keeps in your available balance.
Yeah. So the reason I retweeted that is just I think that teams can view the cap different ways. The Colts tend to operate. They've done a little bit of this stuff in the last couple of years. The Colts tend to operate as if it's more of a hard cap. There are other teams that what they do is essentially they push money into future years. And you can, if you want to, continue to do that. Like the Saints are a good example. We talk a lot about, the Saints losing a guy here or there, Marcus Williams or Trey Hendrickson here or there. But in reality, if you look at them, like right now, they have a very old roster because they kept pushing stuff off to re-sign a lot of their guys. And I don't know if that's good or not. It kind of just depends on whether or not you win, because the Buccaneers and the Rams did this and no one cares because they won Super Bowls. Whereas like the Saints and the Bills didn't win Super Bowls, everyone's killing them now for their cap thing. But the cap is not necessarily hard and fast. There's a lot of different things you can do with contracts that change what the cap is versus what the player is actually getting. Typically, the Colts don't operate that way, but you can if you want to. Like a good example is Eric Fisher a couple years ago. His deal was structured in a way where they pushed some of the cap hit into future years instead of taking it in that year.
Joel A. Erickson from the Star with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. So wake up call on the Fan on this Friday. All right, L'Jarius Sneed. I love him as a player, and I think I agree with you that I'm not totally in love with some of the free agent cornerbacks that right now are on the market. What do you believe to be true with the Colts' interest in Sneed? And is this a guy Colts fans, I don't want to say should expect, but is this a guy they should get their hopes up for, I guess?
I mean, the one thing I keep coming back to, though, is sort of the idea that, Tyler Dragon from USA Today reported at least 7 teams were interested. That's a significant market in terms of you can get someone to pay up. I think corner is obviously in a premier position. You can, if you get in a bidding war, you can pay up. That's kind of sitting in the back of my head. It's like, this is a little bit different than the DeForest Buckner deal in that when the DeForest Buckner deal happened, we had no idea until the news was broken. Nobody reported that, if they reported that Buckner could be out in San Francisco, it would have been like, well, maybe, it wasn't like Sneed where this has been kind of coming for a while and teams have known it. At the same time, the flip side of me looks at it and goes, if kind of what I said on our podcast is just this guy is a clear upgrade in the way that Buckner was a clear upgrade over what they had at 3 Technique at the time, and he's young, he's been durable. There's lots of reasons that you'd want him. I just wonder about with a young. I mean, for all the same reasons, how many teams are in this, and how far do they push the price in terms of trade compensation?
What would that mean for Kenny Moore?
I don't think it should mean anything, honestly. I think you still bring him back because
that's a lot of investment back there.
It is. But I think that after what was said about why they brought Gus Bradley back, they said we're bringing Gus Bradley back. DeForest Buckner flat out said there were some calls Bradley didn't think he could make because of the young secondary. Ballard essentially said the same thing when he was talking about why they decided to bring Gus Bradley back. If you just bring back Kenny Moore and add a strong safety, you're pretty much in the same spot that you were last year. Now, those young guys that they have at corner and safety, some of them are probably going to develop, but we've seen this over the years. Some of them might not develop the way the Colts think they do. And I think if you could, I just keep thinking about if you could put Stephon Gilmore on last year's team, how much that might have changed the Colts defense. And, L'Jarius Sneed is maybe that type of player who could really change the Colts defense. It's hard to remember anything from 2022, but Gilmore was really good in the system and made things pretty easy in the secondary. And I don't necessarily think you just go get any corner, but if you can get somebody who definitively changes your defense, I almost feel like you have to, given the fact that you brought back Bradley, why you said you brought back Bradley, all of that stuff.
Joel A. Erickson is with us here from the Indianapolis Star, the Colts Cover 2 podcast. Him and Nate Atkins, always a great listen with two guys that do an outstanding job in covering the Colts. Joel, I do want to go back to Michael Pittman Jr. from earlier in the week, getting the non-exclusive franchise tag. Anything left unanswered for you outside of, I guess, a long-term deal that you're curious about, Pittman Jr. related?
I think it kind of not really anything left. I just kind of keep thinking, as hard as the Colts work to get him in there, that the Pittman and his agent know, they know exactly how coveted his services would be. And one of the things I keep thinking about is just because he's franchise tagged doesn't mean he doesn't get a better sense of where his market is. There's a bunch of guys who are up for extensions this year, even if they're not in free agency, guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Justin Jefferson and stuff like that. And now that you're on the tag, if you want to get those comps up, because that's what NFL player contracts are. They're comps. It's about, what player do you think I'm like? What player do I think I'm like? And, finding a contract that fits there. Like Jonathan Taylor's a good example. He basically got the Nick Chubb deal from a couple of years before, just inflated for the cap. And so I think if you're Pittman's camp, there's definitely a reason to wait and see if a few more of these receivers sign extensions and you push more guys into the $22, $23 million range, does that raise it for him?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. That's exactly what he will do. It's exactly, quite frankly, what he should do with his big payday. Joel A. Erickson with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline on the Fan on this Friday. Combine-wise, did Chris Ballard say or not say something that maybe has you leaning one way or the other, what he may prioritize at number 15 overall?
He told you guys something. He told you guys something that's kind of been sticking with me right at the end of your interview. He was talking about the guys, they have explosive capabilities on offense, and he said something along the lines of, we've got Jonathan. He said something, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but he said something about, and we need that guy who has the run after the catch. And I kind of was like, that's a little bit more getting into the needs than he likes to do. I don't know if you guys.
I would agree.
Him or what?
I would agree. Trust me, that was a note jotted down very quickly after he said that.
We talked a lot of yak around the combine last week. That was a big term for us.
But yeah, that's the one thing from the combine that sticks in terms of the 15th pick that sticks out to me. One other thing that keeps coming up this week as I'm writing stories, getting ready for free agency, is there's a quote from his podium availability where he said, essentially, there are spots in free agency with more depth, and then, in the draft, maybe you find maybe in the draft there are spots with depth where they don't have it in free agency, and you kind of allow that to, guide your steps. Well, I mean, if we can do this really fast, like spots that don't have depth in free agency. Wide receiver does not have good depth. Tight end does not have good depth. Wide receiver has incredible depth in the draft. If we want to play that sort of game, safety, like we were just talking about, there are a gazillion veteran safeties on the market. I don't actually know about the depth of the safety draft class, but there's also good depth at corner, and there's maybe not great depth. At least there's good depth at corner in the draft class. There's maybe not great depth at corner in the free agency class. So if you use that quote as a guiding light and just look at the market available, you're kind of like, I can kind of see how some of this is going to go.
Joel, we'll end with this, and appreciate your time this Friday morning. Justin for us here late in the week, and Joel A. Erickson from the Stars with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. An under-the-radar storyline for next week. We've hammered Kenny Moore, Grover Stewart, Julian Blackmon a lot, What's the future of backup quarterback? Tyquan Lewis was more than a feel-good story last year. Is he brought back? Do the Colts have a new punter next year? Or is Rigoberto Sanchez a foregone conclusion to be re-signed? Anything a little under the radar that you're paying attention to next week?
I think maybe we're not paying enough attention to what happens with Tyquan Lewis. Because Tyquan was very good last year. I think he was actually third or fourth on the team in pressures, even though the sack numbers weren't quite that high. And he's always been able to. The last couple of times he's been coming off an injury, so he re-signed with the Colts. if you don't get him back, which I would assume the Colts have the leg up with Tyquan, but if you don't get him back, then I would say that there's a clear need on the defensive line. Maybe not a starter level, which is where we tend to look at stuff. But he played a really important role for this team last year. And assuming you let Taven Bryan walk, Adetomiwa Adebawore and his development isn't going to fill both of those spots, I would think. So that's maybe a position, defensive line, that we could see a signing, a draft pick, something. I don't know if we're talking about it as much as possible, as much as we could be, if Tyquan Lewis doesn't come back. If Tyquan Lewis comes back, I think that's sort of, we've sort of been assuming he'll be back. And I just keep thinking, he had a really good season. What if someone wants to pay him?
This might be too nerdy, but the Sanchez one I'm kind of interested in. If they re-sign him, that's top 5 punter money in all likelihood. Are you paying a kicker and a punter top 5 money?
I think I've said this. I think I've said this before in the room. I'll pay almost anybody, between $3 and $5 million. It just doesn't register that much in terms of the overall cap, especially when you're looking at a Colts team that I think when I looked at Spot Rack yesterday had roughly $52 million available. I think you just make sure those spots are good and don't worry about it.
Yeah, but $3 to $5 million to them is a little different than $3 to $5 million elsewhere.
Now, if your goal is to let him walk, and then you're going to bring in is the Iowa punter in the draft?
Oh, yeah, right. Troy Taylor, isn't that his name? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
they're going to build a statue next to Kurt Ferentz for him.
He's the MVP.
I watched too many Iowa games last year. That dude's incredible.
Please pray for Joel
I was about to
watching
say that's hazard pay.
Iowa football here. Gosh, I can't think of anything else I'd rather do on a Saturday afternoon than flip on Big Ten West football with Iowa.
By the way, before Joel gets out of here, Joel, I'm surrounded by a Cubs fan who thinks they're going to win the division and a Reds fan that thinks they're going to win the division. So do you have anything to say to either one of these guys, Mark Dykton or Kevin Bowen?
I don't. Yeah, no. I'm not making any predictions with the Central Division. My team, the Brewers, has been through some upheaval. I have no idea what to expect. I've got nothing. There's both of their teams have some reason for optimism and some reason for pessimism. I think the Central's pretty much wide open.
Why are you bringing him down on a Friday? We're about to say goodbye to him, and you're bringing him down.
Well, I thought, we were going to mention, I thought you were going to play Go Cubs Go or something.
I don't want to do that to him yet.
I forgot all about it.
In Notre Dame product, Pat Murphy, we trust, right, Joel?
I love Pat Murphy right now. Like, who knows?
Well, you can't throw in the caveat of right now. Everything gets thrown out the window when you say right now. Who cares about March 8th?
I know, but that's how it works with every coaching thing. Because if it's 2 years into this and I'm mad at his bullpen stuff, I'll be like, well, all of the fun stuff he said at the beginning was not as great. But Kevin knows this. I'm an obsessive fan, so yes, I am paying very close attention to spring training. Pat Murphy says 3 funny things every day.
There will be Thursdays at the Colts media room, and Joel will have dialed into the live broadcast of Brewers Phillies at 12:35 on a Thursday.
That's a fan, baby. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and he's not talking about he's not talking in September. He means
no, May 7th.
He means April. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Pray for Joel's family. Pray for Joel on top of that. Joel, enjoy hopefully a quiet weekend before the madness begins.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Joel A. Erickson from the Star. I want to go back to the secondary. Again, L'Jarius Sneed and that move, Andy. I kind of view the secondary like this. I need 3 notable moves on the back end of the secondary this offseason. And probably I mean it more in free agency. Now, again, the 3 notable, 2 of them could be just re-signing Kenny Moore and Julian Blackmon.
Okay, that was going to be my question.
Right.
One of them would be Kenny Moore, I think.
I'm treating Kenny Moore and Julian Blackmon right now just for the exercise that they are free agents. So I think you need 3. I think you need, again, theoretically, you could re-sign Kenny. You could re-sign Julian, and then I think you need to do something in a similar mode to those two with an outside of the building, probably a corner. But that's how I view secondary. Joel brought up, and I thought it was a good exercise to remind us about Chris Ballard. You can supplement in the draft spots in free agency. You don't feel like there's a lot of depth. I feel like you've invested a lot of draft stuff in the secondary. I think it's time you invest a little bit of veteran presence back there.
Yeah, especially, listen, the point he makes is right, and that is, you bring Gus Bradley back, and everyone, it's been widely known that you brought Gus Bradley back. Tell me if I'm wrong here. You bring him back because you feel like you didn't give him the players necessary. Ballard has said that with us. He said that in press conference settings, a couple different settings at the combine and then at the end of the season. Like, don't you feel that way? So it wasn't all, or it wasn't maybe at all, Gus Bradley's fault. It was the players that he had. It wasn't the chef's fault. It was the ingredients that he was working with. If that is going to be your conversation piece, if that's going to be your stance, fine, but then that has to be squarely at the top of the list, 1 or 2 in your offseason, because that's why you kept Gus Bradley. So, they got to do something. I'm not totally in love with a lot of these free agent guys, but, Kenny Moore coming back, and I think Joel's right. When there's 7-8 teams involved in a player potentially like Sneed, we already know the money's going to be, $54 million guaranteed to, the Chicago gave Johnson. You got to think that probably your framework of a deal is going to start around that. Don't you feel that way for a player who is in his 20s, who's going to be 26, 27 years old? So you're going to get him dead square in the prime of his career. He's played for an elite team, an elite defensive coordinator like Steve Spagnuolo. So I love the thought of going to get Sneed, but it's going to be a high price, and I guess for me, you probably feel like one of those other 6-7 teams may give up something a little bit more than what Ballard wants to give up.
Speaking of under-the-radar storylines, shout out to Evan from Cluster Truck in the YouTube chat. By the way, The Fan, that's your promo code for Cluster Truck, saving 25% off on $25 or more.
By the way, it's a perfect time to get Cluster Truck if it's all rainy all weekend.
God, especially the weather looking like hell, frankly, outside right now. Evan, curious about Danny Pinter, Ball State product, 5th-round pick from a few years ago, coming off the ankle injury. I treat him like the Jack Mewhort, even the Tyquan Lewis deal, if you want to look at it like that. Re-sign, 1-year deal, prove it. I still think a center in the middle-ish rounds makes some sense. I kind of like pairing Anthony Richardson with something at center moving forward for the next, handful of seasons. I think center is a position you can build with a middle-round pick. Again, I still think Ryan Kelly can help you out there, but that would be an avenue, I think, to explore here coming up in the offseason. All right, it's Freebie Friday for the pop quiz. That is a free Jiffy Lube oil change. I just sent you boys the pop quiz. I think it's the easiest one of the week.
You've said that 3 days
this
in a row.
Is if you have listened to the show today,
don't do that again.
Mark, help me.
This is a layup, and I'm not talking about Aaron Neesmith layup to try and tie the game last night there and set it in overtime. There's no Anthony Edwards hitting his head on the rim here with this one. This is you've cherry-picked, and if you can't you've got an opportunity to make the layup, and if you miss it, you can still get the rebound and put it back.
All right, so I'm looking at it. Question 4 and question 5 are very easy. And
it's a joke. The whole thing's a joke.
I know, but I'm telling you 1, 2, and 3. I hate
You're
to do
calling
this
our
to
listeners idiots if you think this is a hard pop quiz.
I think if you don't handhold, I'm saying 2 at the most.
Oh my God!
I think it's difficult.
Yeah. You just called our listeners idiots.
No, I'm just saying. You keep saying it's easy, and then we set ourselves up for failure.
317-239-1070. The easiest pop quiz in the history of this show is coming at you in a few minutes. Hell, we'll tell you 3 answers on the morning checkdown right here.
Probably, yeah.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, March 11th and 12th.
If you or I don't say it, I have very little confidence they'll get number one right, but we shall see. 113-111 losers last night were the Pacers to the Timberwolves. We've heard a lot from Rick Carlisle today. Last play of the game, Pacers down 2, about 5 or 6 seconds to go. No timeout by Carlisle and company. Halliburton pushes it. He finds Nesmith. Nesmith going in for a layup. We know Anthony Edwards blocked it. What did Halliburton see in that final sequence? Here's Tyrese postgame.
Well, I didn't anticipate Ant missing the free throw, but when he did, I just saw Aaron behind the defense and saw like an advantage for us. And I think Coach trusts us and trusts me to make the right play. And I felt like that was the right look for us. Him behind the defense attacking a defense scrambling to get back there. So just again, kudos to them on just making a hell of a play at the end of the game.
I'm torn on it, to be honest with you. I'll be honest. When Turner caught the rebound and he started to move, I'm like, wait, no timeout? Because I guess I'm so used to the NBA and taking the timeout, advancing the ball, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
I get Carlisle's explanation. I get Halliburton's explanation. Certainly when you see, frankly, just the attack of the Minnesota defenders at the rim and at the backboard, you're like, oh, man, yeah, hindsight's probably 20/20. But as I've said all morning long, you lost the game early, and you've lost these games early seemingly every single time. You have lost the game here as of late. You've just played with no urgency out of the gate, and that really frustrates me. And I think it should be very frustrating to Pacers fans in that you continue to be up and down. You continue to honestly be losing more than you're winning, and yet the starts are not getting any better.
It's the same thing over and over again.
Last night, their best player goes to the locker room on the first play of the game. Karl Anthony Towns isn't playing, and you get down 10-2. And then you're down 14-5, and Carlisle's taking another timeout. What have I called that? Timeouts of distraught? No, it was a different
what did
word
you
I've been
call it?
using.
It wasn't anger, but no, you had something that we would put on a T-shirt.
I know.
Is how you labeled in the first segment that timeout. Well, it may have been just timeout of disgust. I don't know.
That
something
is it.
like that.
Timeout of disgust. Carlisle calls one every damn game, it seems like, in the first 5
And
minutes.
he has to do the walkout where he's frowning, he's pissed off.
He doesn't even single timeout. He just walks on the floor, and the ref's like, I guess he's calling a timeout.
He walks on the floor and does his little mini circle, talks to his staff, and then goes and talks to the team.
And another one last night. Pacers back in action. Orlando, Oklahoma City. Road. Sunday and Tuesday. It'll be a back-to-back with Chicago on Wednesday. Benedict Mathurin out for all those games. Shoulder injury Rick Carlisle shared last night. He will be reevaluated in a week. So not good news for, obviously, one of your more consistent scores off the bench.
Kind of blows my mind how good the Magic are this year.
Yeah, there was
like you just don't think
they're not just like a Pacers thorn in the side. They're now
they're good. Yeah,
yeah, they are. Well, I mean, what are they right now? 5 seed, 4 seed?
Yeah, they're up there.
Yeah, let me check. I thought they were the 4. Yeah, they're the 4 right now.
I mean, hell, they've drafted in the top 10 seemingly for 10 years in a row.
Talk about under the radar. It's just one of those teams where like, oh yeah, they must be bad, and you're like, wait a minute, they're actually really good.
Can you name the Magic head coach?
Mickey Mouse.
They've won 5. They've won no idea. They've won 5 in a row, and they have won 8 out
Jamal
of 9.
Mosley.
Is that it? They won 8 out of 9 and 5 in a row. Have the Orlando Magic. The only team they lost to there, they lost by 17 to the Atlanta Hawks a couple weeks ago. That's it.
3.5 hours from now, Arch Madness begins for Josh Schertz and the Sycamores of Indiana State. 3 games in 3 days is the goal there. 1 o'clock tip with Missouri State coming up. 9.5-point favorite. Missouri State yesterday beat Murray State. Murray State scored 35 points in the game. By the way, did you guys see that Pepperdine Pacific score yesterday?
What was like 59-6? It was something ridiculous like that. Murray State used to be respectable. 35 points. Come on, man. We had 16 in the first half. Come on.
So again, the stretch run for Indiana State would look like 3 afternoon games, Belmont, Northern Iowa tomorrow, and then the championship game would be Sunday on CBS. I mentioned this earlier, and I guess I'll mention it again. Saw this stat floating around on Twitter earlier in the week. In the net era, how long have we had the net? Handful of years? A little bit more than that?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like we're, year 4 or 5? Is that too many? Something like that?
In the net era, every team in the top 31 of the net, Indiana State's currently 29th, on March 5th has made the NCAA tournament. Every single one.
2018. That's when it was born. August 2018.
Don't know if that makes you optimistic if you're an Indiana State fan or
Not
nervous
me.
that
Not me.
there's got to be
Sorry.
one team that eventually breaks that. Again, how do they handle 3 games in 3 days for a team that doesn't play? A lot of guys, a little banged up as well. Certainly something to watch, but looking forward to the next few days for Indiana State at Arch Madness.
One more swoosh here, Mark. Purdue, big weekend, obviously, and it's all going to be on Sunday. Only one Big Ten game on Saturday. Purdue and Indiana both in action on Sunday. Purdue hosting Wisconsin.
I cannot
Obviously,
wait for the scene
it's
for
gonna be
Zach
a scene.
Edey.
No, it's going to be one of the better senior days across the country. 12:30 on Fox. That one on Sunday. Indiana hosting Michigan. That's Michigan State, excuse me. That's going to be 4:30 CBS. Our coverage on IBC at 3:30. And then I figured I'd throw it out there. Instead of just saying fire, they have parted ways. You see Mike Davis got let go. 1 in 30,
see that.
1
Yeah.
in 31 this season at Detroit Mercy.
Mike Davis has had quite the wild career when you think
Yeah,
about it.
Just a little bit, yes.
UAB tournament appearance there. I believe a couple of tournament appearances at Texas Southern. The Detroit thing has not gone well. Did I see right yesterday, 63? Does that sound right? 63 years old for Mike Davis?
I would have to look that up, but I mean, that sounds right. I'm trying to think, back when he was at Indiana and then trying to move through. He was born in 1960, so whatever that is. Yeah, 63 years old.
IndyCar season underway tomorrow, or Sunday, St. Pete will be the location for that one. Marcus Erickson, your defending champ. Scott McLaughlin won it back in 2022, so IndyCar season gets underway. All right, Freebie Friday, the easiest pop quiz in the history of the show. 317-239-1070.
Silk's delicious plant-based beverages help bring a daily dose of goodness.
Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with KB and Andy. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
All right, Jiffy Lube Freebie Friday. So
this thing's a joke, this pop quiz.
Even though this has been deemed as a joke, as the easiest pop quiz in the history of what the pop quiz has been going on for 7 years around. Mark, help me, you're 7-8 years around. Quite a few years.
Some would say a few years too long, but that's
this
okay.
is the IU basketball recruiting class for 2024.
No.
It's a joke.
Oh no! Well, we have full phone lines.
And
again.
Mark has set the Mark thinks 2 will be the correct answer.
2.5.
No, he said 2. He flat out said 2.
No, I said with 2 with the caveat that no one handholds anybody.
I won't
They
do
give
it.
one answer, boom, move on.
Okay.
Don't say, are you sure? No, you move on.
Oh boy, it's just all about the caller. Like, we have 5-6 guys on hold, and we could go.
Or gals.
No offense to the gentleman yesterday. He only had really a couple, and we had to handhold. So he, on an easy pop quiz, he would have went under Mark Dykton's 2.5.
Well,
so using his,
Mark, you can turn off my mic.
I'm scarred. So using our last caller, I would have said he's going to go under whoever we pick.
I'm just saying, if we're respecting the intelligence of our listeners, they give an answer and we move on. We don't. No hand holding.
I've got my 4s up, the football teams to do it. You start the fourth quarter,
Right,
everybody.
yeah,
All
the
right, here
fours.
we go. Lock in. It's always my favorite time. Let's lock in for this pop quiz.
All right.
Let's go with caller 4, Mark.
All right, that's Danny.
Danny, good morning. How are you, man?
Not bad. How you doing?
Danny, are you smart?
Kinda, I guess.
That's a good answer.
Have you been listening to the show today?
I have been. I've missed a little bit because I'm a delivery driver, so I'm in and out. But I've been listening.
Okay.
What do you deliver, Danny?
Alcohol, wine, spirit.
Okay.
Okay, well,
we go.
40 Monument Circle and the
Stop on by.
floor
Level 4.
4. Yeah. What's our room number here? 4.
I'll run down to the lobby.
Yeah.
We're in a bunker. I have no idea.
Let me see what I can get to fall off the truck here.
Thank you on that end. Any particular type of alcohol?
Lots of wine and spirit. So tequila, vodka, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, sounds like my weekend.
Sounds like a dream here. All right, Danny. Well, good luck. I think it's the easiest pop quiz in the history of pop quizzes, and you're going to prove that for me. Andy Sweeney, toss number 1.
All
at it.
right, let's go. We know 113-111 your final last night in Gamebridge. Pacers fall to Minnesota. Who was the Pacers' leading scorer from last night's game?
Siakam.
All right, it's a good start.
Danny, you prefer Danny Manning, Danny Ferry, or former Reds closer with some hair, Danny Graves, or none of them?
Let's go, Danny Manning.
Yeah,
he's about to get fired at Louisville in about 2 weeks.
Well, he could
about a week and a half.
he could score a basketball, to say the least there. All right, number 2, the first IndyCar race of the year is Sunday. Which former Indy 500 champion won last year's opener in St. Pete? Was it Takuma Sato, Scott Dixon, Joseph Newgarden, or Marcus Erickson?
Scott Dixon.
Question number 3. Who will Indiana State be?
Can I chime in?
You can do whatever. There's no way he was getting that. He's still going to hit the over, but he wasn't getting that one.
Overruled.
Andy was shaking his head as soon as the question was asked.
That's the one I had no confidence in. Question number 3. Who will Indiana State be playing in the quarterfinals of Arch Madness today? Is it Missouri State, Murray State, Belmont, or Northern Iowa?
Missouri State.
Mark Dykton shaking in his boots
I'm
there.
I'm just fine here.
The intelligence of one Danny on full display. IU-Purdue both at home, Danny, for their final Big Ten regular season games of the season. Again, it'll be Purdue inside of Mackey 12:30 on Fox. CBS for Indiana 4:30 on Sunday. Name one of the 2 opponents for these teams coming up on Sunday.
Wisconsin?
Not even both of them. I love it. Do you know the other one? I'm just wondering. Do you know the other one?
Oh, no, I don't remember it off the top of my head.
All right, so good thing we went 1 and 2. Last one. Free agency begins around the NFL next week. Which one of the following is not a Colts free agent? Is it Julian Blackmon, Kenny Moore, Gardner Minshew, or E.J. Speed?
E.J. Speed.
There we go. We got 4 out of 5. It's pretty good.
Terrific job, Danny. Thank you for
that's Siakam
backing me up here.
I mean, I just assume you gave the kiss of death because you're always like, it's the easiest. And someone's like, well, I've been listening all day.
And I was quiet.
I've been listening all day except for the first 2.5 hours. It's like, okay, that's 5 minutes.
See,
I am a little frustrated by Danny's Scott Dixon answer.
What I didn't see, because I skimmed it, was KB said, name one of the 2 opponents. So he knew Wisconsin, but not Michigan State. And if we would have went with both there, he gets that wrong, and he would have got 3 out of 5.
Mark had it too. Danny, stay on the line.
Agreed, but 3 out of 5 would not have got you all, turned on and bothered. You'd have been disappointed by 3 out of 5.
Missouri State, the opponent for Indiana State. I mean this in all seriousness. Can you imagine the nerves that Josh Schertz is feeling right now about to board the bus to the arena?
I mean, absolutely. Again, Missouri State led and only lost by 2 to Indiana State a couple weeks ago, right? That game was, 3 weeks ago?
And I guess I'm talking in Indiana State bubble right now, but I'm also just talking of mid-major life for the 1 seed. You dream to, be in the mid-major conference tournament and try and play for the automatic bid. You are the 1 seed. You've got the path. You've had this unbelievable regular season, and now you're in one and done. And it's win or go home. And I guess if I want to stick with maybe more of the Indiana State side of it, I mean, hell, if you're Josh Schertz and you make the tournament and you win a game or two,
you get paid.
It's the most life-changing event that can happen.
I know.
Look at homeboy who's at USC who's been there forever. The Gulf Coast guy, Dunk City, Andy Enfield.
Who had the hot wife. Wasn't that? That's the Wasn't that the only thing people cared about? Yeah.
Well, it was also entertaining basketball, if you want to focus on that for a second.
They're trying to keep that alive, too. Florida Gulf Coast, Dunk City, whatever they called them. I don't know if that's... that was 6 years ago.
I mean, think about it. Brad Stevens is coaching the freaking Celtics. Jim Larinaga was at Miami. All these mid-major stories that, and I don't know, Butler maybe doesn't qualify as some of the others. On a much smaller scale, look at Tobin moving on from Fairleigh Dickinson last year.
Yep.
Sheehan Holloway going from St. Peter's to Seton Hall. It's just I can't imagine the mid-major coach. And on the flip side of it, the other teams in those tournaments of, hey, we can be pull off the upset. We can be the one that no one is talking about through the regular season, and now we shock, our little conference tournament bubble world, and now we're the ones hearing our name on Selection Sunday.
The difference even with Indiana State is, and I believe this, it's different than the mid-major that knows they're going to be the 16 seed or they're going to be playing in Dayton on that Tuesday. It's not that with Indiana State. Indiana State is very much, hey, if we take care of business and we win, there's a chance that we win a game in the NCAA tournament. I know the Purdue jokes and the Virginia jokes, but the 16 goes in knowing we could lose 90-45, right? That's not Indiana State. They have to feel that, hey, we get into this, baby. We're a 10 seed, whatever it may be. We have a chance to absolutely be there, win a game in the tournament. Suddenly you're the darling of the first round.
Shout out to Evansville, by the way. They are still alive. They did upset, based off seed, Illinois State last night. Illinois State, remember, beat Indiana State at home earlier this year. So Evansville will get Drake tonight. So if you look at the bottom of that bracket there, Drake, of course, the team that Indiana State has split with this season. We'll see if Evansville can shock the world there and get that done. All right, we'll do it one final time, closing it out here on a Friday.
Crime and violence in Indy, chaos at our border. 1,000 miles apart, but the cause is the same. Soft on-crime policies pushed by the far left. I'm Jefferson Shreve. I took them on because I couldn't accept it. Now the fight is bleeding into our suburbs and up from our southern border. We need conservative leaders who keep their word. For law, order, and a secure border, I'm Jefferson Shreve, and I approve this message.
Indiana businessman Jefferson Shreve.
Let's talk about the mess we're in today. The left's pushing their agenda, our culture's under attack from the far left, and don't even get me started on the border. I took on the left and their lawlessness in Indianapolis And now it's bleeding into our suburbs and rising from our southern border. It's time to fix the problem in Congress. For law, order, and a secure border, I'm Jefferson Shreve, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Shreve for Congress.
Want more speed? Then you're in luck, because Xfinity just increased their internet speeds, and they're faster than ever. Plus, with super fast internet and a reliable connection, you can do more of what you love whenever you want. More gaming, more downloading, more video chatting, and more cozy nights on the couch streaming your favorite movies and TV shows. If life with double the speed is sounding pretty awesome, that's because it is. It's time to get more out of your internet with faster speeds from Xfinity. Get 150 megabit Xfinity internet for only $20 a month for 12 months with no annual contract. That's double the speed for the same great price. Plus, for a limited time, learn how you can get a $100 prepaid card when you get more speed when you sign up online. Just go to Xfinity.com to switch today. Requires paperless billing and autopay with stored bank account. Restrictions apply. Equipment taxes and other charges extra. After promo, regular rates apply. Actual speeds vary and not guaranteed.
Hey, it's Mark Dykton, and if you're like me, you're checking your weather app daily, or you're just looking outside, you want to know what the weather's going to be like, and right now we're kind of in that middle ground between winter and spring, where the weather could be pretty much anything on a daily basis, so you could be switching from the heat and the air conditioning within 24 hours of each other. If you're checking out your heating or air conditioning unit and you're like, this doesn't seem like it's up to snuff, give my friends at Love Heating and Air Conditioning a call today. They have fourth-generation owners John and Chris Love. They'll make sure you're a satisfied customer, just like the Dykton household is. We gave them a call last summer, had them check us out, and they said, yeah, you got 20-year-old furnace and air conditioning units. Might be time to get those replaced. So we did talk financing options, and they were in our house within the week and got us installed and ready to go. We have had zero complaints ever since. Love Heating and Air Conditioning has been serving Central Indiana and Indianapolis, family-owned and operated for over 100 years. You can give them a call at 317-353-2141. Check out all their products that they offer and services at love-hvac.com. Again, Love Heating and Air Conditioning, 317-353-2141, or online at love-hvac.com.
Hey, are you having a hard time dealing with high-interest credit card debt? It's normal, and a SoFi personal loan could help you save thousands by consolidating your DEBT to one low fixed monthly payment. You could get $5,000 to $100,000 as soon as the same day you sign, with no fees required. It only takes 60 seconds to view your rate, and it won't affect your credit score. View your rate at SoFi.com/paid-off. Loans originated by SoFi Bank N.A. Member FDIC. Terms and conditions at SoFi.com/paid-off. NMLS 696891.
At Lowe's, pros save big every day when you buy in bulk. Save 10% when you buy 230 or more select James Hardie fiber cement siding panels. And there's more. Save 10% when you buy 9 or more select premium foam flooring underlayment. Visit us in-store or online for low prices on the materials you need. Because Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Discount taken at time of purchase. See sales associate for details.
It was this kind of hilarious moment last year where they started to try and cancel like dead people. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, like John Wayne was trending.
Oh my God, did you see what John Wayne said in 1971? I can no longer tolerate dead for 45 years. John Wayne.
From his Netflix specials and F is for Family, Bill Burr, live. Tomorrow night, Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Reserve seats on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. Bill Burr, live.
Friday on Guerin Company, IUPUI is looking for a new basketball coach. Their AD will join us. So too will Mike DeCourcy, Kevin Bowen, and Scott Dixon to kick off the IndyCar season. Fun begins at noon. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
It's the wake-up call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
I heard that. What time you going on with Guerin Company? You ready for that? You prepping for that right after our show here, KB?
Yeah, Eddie Garrison and I are still trying to figure out the old time there. So now Jake is off to St. Pete, right? Coming up later today?
Yeah.
I see that today it's going to be 84 degrees in that part of Florida.
Must be nice, right?
Meanwhile, you're checking the weather in Tennessee for golf.
Ugly rain.
Is it
certainly
ugly in
here.
Tennessee as well?
Yeah,
it's just
going to be
everywhere.
Ugly
everywhere
today. It is the weird weekend of no Pacers Friday or Saturday. You don't.
Yeah,
usually you get the NBA team playing one of those two nights.
Yeah, we go all the way to
here.
Sunday at 6 o'clock.
What's
kind
next?
of odd.
Does anybody know what they go out west in 2 weeks? Is that right? What is that, Mark? Is that the circus over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse?
Is it this? I think it's.
Okay, so
I'll
it's
have to look that up.
So what?
It was Disney on Ice back during the first West Coast trip.
Is it the road?
NCAA
It might
tournament.
be. It might be the bowl racing or the bowl thing.
It's a tournament.
Yeah,
It's a
gosh,
tournament.
I'm an idiot. It's the first 2 rounds,
Yeah,
right?
because it's the 22nd. It's that weekend.
That
and
Friday, Sunday
And
are games at
And so
Gainbridge.
they leave on, before, but their first game is in Detroit on the 20th. And then the 22nd is that hang on, I should know this. Yeah, is that Friday.
Gosh,
So
I'm an idiot. Yeah.
So the
Yeah,
22nd
we're
they
dumb.
play the Warriors. By the way, Steph Curry twisted his ankle. That's been the only thing. He's had ankle twisting of the ankle issues. He turned an ankle last night, so he might be out sometime. Now, again, this is a couple weeks away. But, yeah, the 20th, they're in Detroit. The 22nd, it's Golden State. And then it's the 2 L.A. teams on the 24th and 25th. The back-to-back, you get the Lakers. And
The
then you get
back-to-back
Paul
where you
George.
don't have to move the hotel room, right?
Yeah.
You're in the same arena on back-to-back nights.
And if you can beat the Lakers that first night, you can go out and enjoy maybe the town before you meet Paul George.
Yeah, it's probably
and
going to be an
company.
uphill challenge against
Yeah.
the Clippers, so you might as well enjoy LA.
Is there a guy that you're maybe not Colts-wise, okay? Because, again, we'll see what Ballard does and the Sneed trade is out there and everything else. Is there a guy in free agency that just another team you're going to be watching? Maybe even, the Texans probably lose Jonathan Grenard, who is their good edge guy. They might get one of these big running backs, a Saquon Barkley, something like that. Maybe, staying in the AFC, maybe, the Ravens, if they want one of these running backs, a Derrick Henry or somebody like that. Is there any guy that you're watching that you're kind of just interested in just because you enjoy the NFL?
Well, I would say for Houston's case, what about Saquon Barkley?
Yeah.
We're living in our what are the Colts going to do with a rookie contract bubble. Well, Houston's in the same way. What are they going to do with their rookie contract quarterback? And obviously, they're going to be a huge rival for years to come. We'll see if it comes to fruition, but I do think Chris Ballard's feeling a little bit of the seat.
You've said that all week. Yeah, you've said
Now,
it.
the actions will also tell us a whole lot, but I do think there is a bit of warmth. What do you got? Seat level 1, 2, and 3 on the warmth. At least that's in my Honda Civic. I'm a frequent. Let's just ratchet it up to number 3 right away and see how hot we can make this car. I think we're in 2 to 3 mode with the Colts GM. What does he do? Does he do things differently? Again, it's also a very unique period. It's not like you're feeling the pressure and you're hands tied behind your back cap-wise, too. I mean, Again, they started the offseason with north of $70 million. I mean, that's a ton of flexibility. Now, you've got in-house guys you'd like to take care of, but if you want to, you could let some of those guys walk and just bring in whatever, inject new life into your roster at several different spots. So I'm very, very interested to see how next week unfolds for the Colts. Obviously, Ballard's MO is nothing crazy, especially early on in free agency, but do we see some things differently from him?
Yeah, I think for me, it's always, there's that first wave of free agency, the big-time players that are out there that get the 4-year deals where we're talking about 30, 40, 50-plus million in guaranteed money. And those are interesting. I'm not running away from those. And if, I almost said the Pacers, if the Colts went out and they made the move for Sneed and they paid him $50 million guaranteed, that way, I'm not saying I'm not interested in that. I'm very much interested in that. But sometimes games and, conferences are won by the next round of free agency, the second and third rounds, and I know Ballard has had a lot of those guys, who fits into that second and third round, and maybe even a third round would be a guy like a Gus Edwards or wide receiver like a Josh Reynolds, somebody like that. And then on top of it, I don't really care about this conversation, but it could affect an AFC team is, there's now 2 reports out there from Pittsburgh that Russell Wilson and the Steelers may meet here early in free agency.
Today, right?
Yeah, again, I don't know how much, that turns me on, but Russell Wilson very well could be a starting quarterback in the
Mrs.
AFC.
Wilson probably turns me on a little bit more than that, if I'm going to be totally honest.
Probably a little bit more, but I'm looking at The Athletic. They have their rank of free agents. Like a guy like Bud Dupree, a running back like DeAndre Swift. I don't know. There's quality guys that we don't think about. And, you know, whether it be backup running back, backup quarterback, those are things that the Colts are going to need, right? I mean, they have to.
It is crazy. By the end of Monday, you could have a top 10 player in this roster no longer here.
Sure.
Depending on how Kenny Moore, Grover Stewart, Julian Blackmon life go for the Colts. Everybody have a great weekend. Try to enjoy it amidst the weather. We'll talk to you on Monday.